We are live.
Great.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Martin. I'm Chair of the Public Design Commission. Welcome to the Public Design Commission meeting. As New York City's design review agency, the Public Design Commission, PDC, has jurisdiction over the design of permanent structures, landscape architecture, and art proposed on or over city-owned property. Today's meeting is being held in person at City Hall. Members of the public can attend and give testimony either in person or remotely. The public meeting is now commencing with the consent agenda and items numbers 29007 to 29017 and items number 29839 to 29853. Are there any recusals to note? Okay. Let the record show there are no recusals. I'll now call for the vote. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote for the consent agenda. Isabel Casilla?
Approval.
Lori Hawkinson,
Approve.
Karen Keel,
Approval.
Carrie Maloney,
Approval.
Manuel Miranda,
Approval.
Merrill Tisch,
Approval.
Jimmy Van Bramer.
Approval.
I also approve all, so let the record show all are in favor and the consent agenda is passed. We'll now continue with the public hearing portion of this meeting. The first public hearing item is item number 29854, preliminary review of the construction of an open space under the ramps to the Ed Koch Queensboro Bridge at Dutch Kills Street between Jackson Avenue and the Long Island Railroad in Long Island City, Queens. For standard procedure, applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants. We can now begin with the presentation and welcome Nick.
Morning, Commissioners. Happy holidays. Hope everybody's doing well. My name is Nick Petnati. I am the Deputy Director of Urban Design for the New York City Department of Transportation and the liaison to this commission. I'm here just to introduce the team, and I'm going to turn it over so we can move through this very quickly. I want to keep you all on schedule, but we're very excited today to present a really great open space at Dutch Kills in Long Island City, Queens. I'm going to turn it over to Ed Wallace to give a little bit of history, and then we'll get to Jay and Alexia to go through the design. Ed, all yours.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you. And this is very exciting. I was going to say I'm here as the historian, but I actually think Commissioner Van Bramer is more of a historian. I'm the lawyer for Friends of the Underline. This has been a long time coming, and happily we will answer any questions. We've studied this a lot. Our partners at DOT have been terrific, so we hope that if there are questions, we can answer them today or get back to you, but we want to keep this moving to the degree we can. With that, I'm going to turn it on to Alexia Friend and Jay Valgora, who are responsible for the design. Alexia is the landscape architect, Jay's the overall architect. Alexia, I think you go first, or Jay? Okay.
Thank you, Ed. I just turned it on?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I can just speak to the room. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here and present this to you, especially we've been working closely with this community for 4 years. So I'm really excited to show this to you. So this shows the overall context within the site of New York. We're really looking at Long Island City, as you can see here. Zooming in a little bit, the space is unusual. It's about an acre of space underneath the highway ramps that actually bridge over Sunnyside Yards, as well as connect into the Queensboro Bridge, the Ed Koch Bridge. So it's a very unusual space. We're really excited about the possibility of bringing this to life because when you look at the surrounding neighborhood, actually, this neighborhood was identified by New York Magazine as having the most residences of any single neighborhood in New York City, 21,000 up until the year 2017, many more still coming. And yet it's the third least amount of open space actually in the area. Furthermore, the nearest playground is actually Murray Playground, which is over a half-mile away. So the idea of creating open space for this community, which really wasn't our idea, it was presented to us and asked of us, we think is so important. So we feel very privileged to work on it. Now, you can see some of the pictures here. And this shows you that even though it is under the highway ramps, they're fairly elevated. There is a lot of open space. There is a lot of light around it. So it's really important for us. And then also in response to the commission's comments that we really try to figure out how to optimize this for the community. So we're part of a group. DOT is really partnering with us. It wouldn't be possible without them. American Lions Group and the nonprofit that Ed mentioned is actually going to be controlling and funding and maintaining this public space. So that's all a critical component. I'm Jay Valgora with Studio V Design and Planning. We're a WMBE with my partner, Kathy Chan. I'm working closely with Alexia Friend from LVF, our landscape architect. but we have land use counsel, environmental attorney, civil engineers, great lighting designer who's here today, Naomi. So it's really important, and a playground designer. We wanted to really create a fantastic playground. And I've been working in this community for over 20 years, including with some of the people at this table. So it was very important for us that we could create something really beautiful for this place. So we did extensive listening sessions, meeting with stakeholders, over 36 meetings over nearly a 4-year period. And really the groundwork for this was laid even in the 2 years before that. So it was very important for us to meet with nonprofits, community groups, stakeholders. Some of them are here today. And we really looked at examples because we're not the first people to look at creating an open space. So there are examples throughout New York City, the Golconda Skate Park, under the bridge in Brooklyn, other examples in Manhattan at Riverside Park, St. Mary's Playground in Brooklyn. So this is something that really has been explored by other people, although we'd like to create some of the finest examples. And we also looked at other examples, for example, the Underline in Miami or the Beltway in Toronto. So really, we tried to find the best examples of how to create and program public spaces under this kind of infrastructure to make it beneficial to the community. Here's the existing plan. It's very important to note, it's a little bit unusual. Most open spaces would be surrounded by public streets. This is Jackson Avenue on this side. North is to the right. In this particular image, this is Dutch Kill Street here, which is actually covered by one of the bridges. And then here you can see the second bridge. So there's 2 of them. This one's off of our site. Our site begins right here. This is Sunnyside Yards on the left. And so the ramps extend over Sunnyside Yards. And these are the back of a series of different buildings, but also stakeholders too. For example, the Sculpture Center is here. This is the back of their property, but they've also emerged as a partner in this. And we tried to reach out and work with each of the different groups. This was the previous plan that we proposed to the commission. We appreciate and thank you for your comments. And we've made some changes and revisions to it and are continuing to develop it further. And this is the revised plan where we responded to some of those comments. And I can just highlight some of the programming areas. From Jackson Avenue, this whole portion is more open. And we have an outdoor patio where we can activate this with outdoor dining, as well as kind of a picnic row and a bike rack at kind of the entry point to it and to encourage people to come in. We're creating a flexible art space that ties into the Sculpture Center. So again, they open onto the adjacent street, but they have a small sculpture courtyard here. And by removing a wall between the two, we can create a significant new open space, not just for Sculpture Center, but for all community art groups. Very important feature. One of the most important we'll talk about today is the playground. We really want to create a wonderful, unique, really special playground for the community children. We have a pickleball court over here. We reduced the number of that slightly in the latest presentation in order to optimize and increase the scale of the playground, as well as create, different kinds of facilities. There's a dog run. All of these program components came through public outreach with the community. The dog run's important too because it attracts a lot of activity, especially earlier in the day and late in the day.
Sorry. I want to go back to the pickleball thing
Sure.
for a second. How did you choose pickleball instead of basketball or soccer or things that are more conducive to the younger population feeding off of as they outgrow a playground?
I think we
With
actually,
what you can fit in? I'm just curious.
no, we actually did consider other uses such as basketball, but in open meetings with stakeholders in the community, they actually expressed a desire for pickleball. I think there's actually a great interest in pickleball right now. And so they specifically requested that. So we did that in response to community outreach. So that was very specifically
I'm
from the stakeholders.
I work in a different kind of grouping, and I am just saying that the delta between playgrounds and usable spaces for teens is big. So I was just curious
Sure.
how you got there, but I take your point very well. I think there is among certain populations a very big interest in pickleball.
And we tried very hard to really balance all of these different needs on the site, and especially working with the constraints of DOT too, because of the geometries of the bridges. We have to make sure that we maintain separations, distances, maintenance facilities, and so forth. So we feel lucky that we were able to work with the different groups in order to try to find a balance between all the different uses.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all. I
It's
think the
just
question is
this
very good.
pickleball thing has come up in so many different places. I didn't know pickleball was so popular. Out in the Hamptons, very popular. I didn't know under the train tracks in Queens, all that popular. So,
I can tell you, exceedingly popular.
and there we go.
We
So
will
contin-
have sorry, I just wanted to mention, we do have testimony eventually, so we can have a discussion after the public testimony, but I'm sorry, it's okay.
It seems like a fait accompli, and I just wanted to know, because I think other than that, it's great. I think even pickleball is great, but just curious.
Well, thank you. So it's very important for us to work between all the different groups, and there were a few other components that also came even from the commission. So what we call the urban grove, if you will, which is this area towards the backside, and we wanted to kind of give that appropriate scale and activate that too. So we've increased the amount of planting there, and we've done sun studies and so forth that actually show that we think planting can do well there. This backs up against the building, so we wanted to create an appropriate scale. And in combination with our partner, the Sculpture Center, this also provides opportunities possibly to even extend public artworks. And it really depends on the artist they're going to commission, because they'll testify later, but they commission individual works and actually create pieces for periods of time. So we wanted to create flexible spaces that would allow for that. So we're excited about creating all these different components. And finally, we wanted to create this path that would actually lead one through the park that actually goes underneath the bridge. And we'll show you an updated rendering of that in a moment. So these are some of the details, kind of zooming in a little bit, and I'll go relatively quickly because the whole team is here to answer questions. I don't want to use up all the time. So this shows the more open area at the front, outdoor seating, picnic row, planting, defining the flexible art space, this plaza, differences in paving material and so forth. And in response to the commission, we've actually made sure that all of these areas will be accessible, easy to maintain, will hold up very well. So we started to look into details, for example, about different sorts of asphalt bases provided by the DOT and different kinds of resin-bound gravel and so forth in order to make sure that we meet all the accessibility requirements. We can define the different spaces. We can create different scaled areas. Continuing the urban grove, I referred to this a little bit earlier, and Alexia is going to be talking about the different plant types and so forth, but we're defining those and creating a series of smaller spaces with different planted areas. And again, we've started to follow up, and in our final, of course, we'll be providing the full final details to make sure that all the paving areas work very well to find these individual areas and are fully accessible. Continuing, and even, we're into furniture selections and site furnishings and so forth. The picnic grove, we think is kind of special. Again, working through the different paving materials, but we really wanted to create kind of fun, interesting street furniture and create things that would be, both easy to maintain, but that would be distinctive and hold up well. Also, that works very well adjacent to the art space because it provides a place for, people to have lunch or to dine outdoors. Continuing the outdoor patio, again, paving details and so forth, and the bike rack. And here, right at the entry, we wanted to make sure that we created a place for people to be able to park their bikes. And so we're looking at different kind of painted asphalt surfaces for things like that. The infamous pickleball court, looking at creating a proper surface for that to include those materials. And we're really going to be playing with some bright colors and things. The dog run, we're looking at doing, state-of-the-art dog run using special kinds of AstroTurf and methods of keeping it clean and sanitary. So we're looking at the latest examples in the city in order to make sure that we maintain those and so forth. The bridge underpass. This is one of the key elements, and I'm going to return to that and present that in more detail. But we love the idea of doing paving because Dutch Kills was originally a river. And so we actually wanted to create this idea of the flow of the original river that went through here, as well as create some colorful furnishings. This is a view of it today. This is what it looks like today when it's not accessible to the public, where it's just used as a storage and construction area. And this is how we envision that in the future. So I think it's very important that we'll have outdoor dining next to it. We'll have this fun paving. We have our lighting designer here to talk about creating a pathway and lighting and making sure that it feels safe, creating outdoor furniture, creating bike paths, and leading to the playground, which we'll talk about in a moment. This is the playground, and I'm going to start it off and I'm going to introduce Alexia, our landscape designer, and she's actually working closely with us on this. The only thing I'll say is that we really want to create it for a range of different age groups. We're working with Monstrum, who has actually demonstrated and done some of the most fun, creative playgrounds in New York City. They've only done a few, but they're a Danish company that does really creative work with creating original playgrounds and yet meeting all the safety standards that are absolutely critical for our children. I mean, my kids grew up going to playgrounds around here, including in this neighborhood. So I think it's really important that we make sure we address those. So we're doing rubberized play surfaces. We're creating a whole bunch of really fun kind of water-based themes, and I'll introduce Alexia, and she'll take it from here and start to talk about that.
Thank you. I think I need your mic.
Oh, yeah, take mine.
Just hold it. Hello, I'm Alexia Friends of LVF Landscape Architects, and just building on what Jay was saying, We're working with Monstrom, whose equipment you probably recognize. They have a pipefish installed at Chelsea Waterside Park on 23rd and 11th. They have the famous sturgeons, which are very popular down at Pier 26 in Hudson River Park. And what they're really known for is creating fantastical creatures that inspire imagination, also with high play value. That being said, this site we're trying to limit penetrations in coordination with DOT, so we're really relying heavily on the equipment to do a lot of the play value and experience on site. The theme for the playground is a water dragon. And the water dragon is going to anchor the 5 to 12 age groups. So there will be sliding, tactile play, exploratory enclosed play within the body of the dragon and all throughout the site. So what you're seeing here is the 5 to 12 age range, which is currently being developed in concert with Monstrom. The safety surfacing is going to be designed so that it is in theme with this, in color, and also provide unstructured free play space. The 2 to 5 play space is at the northern end of the site, so that's the top portion of the screen here. It will be similar in play value, so there will be slides for tots. There will also be a lot of imaginary play, so enclosed playhouses for pretend shopping and family time, as well as steering and driving and all of those developmental aspects. We're also looking at climbing for gross motor opportunities to support children's development from the 2 to 5 zone. I will also say that I'll get into planting in a moment, but we are looking at enhancing the environment so that there will be more planting, environmental comfort with benches for caregivers and shade, because this portion of the site actually does get, as the sun comes around this way, it does get midday sun, and we are aware of that and looking for opportunities to address that. Again, limiting penetrations on site, given the DOT parameters underneath the bridge structure. And so we're working with typical Monstrom footings. They've all been used successfully in the city. And then I'll go into site details and then pass it back over to Jay. The playground will be fully enclosed. It will meet CPSC, ASTM, and ADA requirements, which I failed to mention earlier. There are portions of the fence that will need to be removable so that DOT can have access to the site if they ever need to repair the bridge structures or for any other reason. And then in terms of planting, again, we're primarily within a planter system because of the limited penetrations on site. Everything will drain properly. We will incorporate weeps and drainage fabric to make sure that we don't create hydric soil conditions. So we're very well aware of that. So what does the planting feel like? Given the limited soil volume, also there are areas of shade, there are areas of sun as well, but we are looking at mostly an understory plant palette with understory trees such as dogwood and sumac, which you'll see in a later slide. We want the material to be able to grow quickly so that we get good coverage. We also want to make sure that there's a clear understory palette. So trying to simplify some of the understory palette for ease of maintenance, being aware of what that might look like in the future. In order to achieve some of the planting, the planters will have some soil mounding to get that additional soil depth. And we're trying to create an area that will have seasonal interest, that will have plants that grow, again, quickly and get good coverage to limit weeds, and excitement for children and adults alike. I'll just close off with saying that I'm going to pass it back to Jay, and these are just some more plant examples, but we are looking for opportunities for some more in-grade planting that could potentially drain to the sub-drainage and increase shade within the playground space.
I'm happy to say that also, in response to working with the commission, working with our partners at DOT, there has been an evolution too, where originally much of the site was capped. We're working with our environmental people, but we think, as Alexia mentioned, there's more opportunities to do some in-grade planting. And so we're exploring that further for our final submittal to you. And frankly, we're excited about that because we think adding a bit more greenery in these areas we're showing you is helpful. And that also relates to our stormwater strategy. So this is really a key thing, and working closely with DOT, because they've been grappling with this problem for years. Like, how do you handle the water flowing off of the bridges And the drainage of the site is critical. So Langen is here, and also in the question and answer, we're happy to go into this in more detail if you wish. But essentially, we think we've come up with a really creative solution. And basically, on this bridge here, you have a series of downspouts that come in. And so we're looking for how do you collect the stormwater that just collects on the site, which is mostly a hard cap, and how do we deal with the water from above? And we've done very careful calculations to show that. And we've come up with a really interesting idea that's been proven in other sites on the city of using a special permeable pavement. We like this because then it allows us to capture that stormwater, channel it, and bring it back into the ground by still doing limited penetrations, but in these areas here that are highlighted in blue. What's also interesting is it captures the stormwater. We've calculated according to the agency standards that are necessary from the bridge above, even in a storm event, but also this entire portion here to the west. North is to the right, but this whole western portion. So all of that drains into the permeable pavement. And we think that's a really innovative approach. It even ties into the design itself, where we created that kind of river walkway and pathway, as this was originally a wetland and a river that actually led into Sunnyside Yards historically. And so we love the idea of recreating, if you will, the story of the original Dutch gills or Dutch river that historically existed on the site, and capturing the stormwater from the highway and treating that in a sustainable manner. You can see other drainage in the site has been worked out, and we've looked carefully at the grading and the detailing in order to make sure that the drainage works on this side into the existing drains and vents that are already in place there. And so we're capturing the stormwater from the western portion of the site, and the eastern portion will drain into the existing storm system. And then these are some of the details that again show some of those paving materials, including permeable pavement. And then this shows where we're looking to make certain penetrations for some of the utilities and water services and so forth, which is part of the application. And then finally, we have the lighting, and I'll just touch on this briefly, and then we'd love to take your questions and answers. We've looked at the existing lighting of the site. There are some existing lights here. And Cosentini, our lighting partner, has done an existing photometric survey in order to identify any areas that might be slightly deficient, so we could fill them in with lighting. And they've done some studies of that, showing some of those lighting studies. And then now we're proposing, and we're working through the final details, possibly working with DOT to utilize some of their fixtures, and then supplementing that with catenary type fixtures. We are allowed to attach with clips to the bridges, and so we can hang lights between them, as well as possibly put those kind of individual lights that lead to this pathway and create something that would be really fun and special, especially this time of year when it gets darker a little bit earlier. We want to make sure that we have appropriate lighting. And so these are our photometric studies. So really, in conclusion, we have a nonprofit who's going to be working on this from the beginning. And this is so often a problem for open spaces, public spaces. They've funded the maintenance and actually increased the amount for it up front. And so that money is already set aside, to handle that over the next 15 years, which is really a very big deal. And the fact they've created a nonprofit going forward doing fundraising to even raise more money for the space. So this is both a design presentation we're making to you, but also we're very excited. We think it's really a model for developing these kinds of spaces. And I know there's been a tremendous amount of interest in this. And so we're excited to show this to you. We welcome your comments, and we hope to be able to go forward with it very quickly. So that's our presentation. I'll just kind of go back to the rendering. More interesting. Look at.
Thank you so much. I will first call for testimony because I believe we have a couple of people signed up. Chelsea, has anybody signed up for a remote testimony?
Yes, we have someone signed up for remote testimony. I'm also noting that Councilmember Julie Wan is in here. If you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself, you may begin, Councilmember Wan. Please limit your testimony to 3 minutes if possible. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much to Architect Studio V and the PDC. My name is Julie Wan, and I am really excited to be here with you today. And I also want to give a special shout out to, can you all hear me okay? Okay. I want to give a special shout out to my predecessors, Councilmember Jimmy Van Bramer, for starting off this project, and I have the honor of finishing it off, hopefully to the finish line. So I'm here today to express strong support for the proposal for the Dutch Kills Open Space Proposal, a project known as LIC Ramps or the Underline. This project has received broad community support over the years, and bringing it into fruition is a critical piece of realizing the local community's ongoing request for more open space within Long Island City. Long Island City community has been asking for a Rams open site for over a decade and commissioned a planning study to outline appropriate criteria. Currently, the neighborhood lacks sufficient open space, with the need for open space continuing to grow in the recent years. The need for space is urgent, and I know that you can support us by tackling this project, taking this project from blueprint to build it as quickly as possible. I note that DOT, as an agency with jurisdiction over the property, will enforce the elements of your approval. Because the community has been asking for a Rams open space for so long, we're confident that once completed, the community will embrace it and treasure it as an amenity. I'm specifically excited about the following design elements to come directly from the community. The proposed playground is a unique and will be destination for kids all over District 26. In particular, the design team was responsive to our requests and expanded the playground to fit larger kids and little kids, as well as the design that is culturally appropriate for the fastest growing AAPI population in Long Island City. A dedicated space for District 26 dogs has been long needed, and this key element will help to improve the neighborhood cleanliness and foster a sense of community. The dedicated space for art will also help highlight the community arts organization, specifically the Sculpture Center, which is celebrated and a cultural institution in District 26. Thoughtful design and planting and stormwater treatment, which will improve existing air quality and infrastructure. I thank DOT, the Open Space Nonprofit, American Lions, as well as Studio V for their commitment to as Court Square Civic Association and Long Island City Partnership, and everyone involved, especially Community Board 2, for completing a space that is responsive to the community. And I want to thank the parties for prioritizing maintenance through dedicated funding and designated a dedicated nonprofit for the space to support planned programming that ensures that District 26 residents can enjoy this open space immediately in the future for many years to come. I urge PDC to approve this plan and prioritize the final review so that my constituents can begin to use the space they've been requesting from the city over a decade. Currently, our Long Island City has one of the fastest growing populations. We have the longest wait list for 3K in Queens, but we do not have a playground at all in Court Square. So I really look forward to using this amenity myself as a mom of 2. So thank you so much for this time. And I look forward to hearing great news in the future.
So much, Council Member. Chelsea, do we have anybody else signed up for testimony?
Yes, the next person we have signed up is Sohrab Mohebi. If you are in the Zoom room, please use the raise hand feature.
Front and
Hello.
and your affiliation. Thank you.
Good morning. Morning, everyone. My name is Sohrab Mohebi. I'm the Director of Sculpture Center in Long Island City. We are one of the oldest art organizations in the city. Started in 1928, so we're almost 100 years old. And we are proud to speak here in support of this project. We are currently located on Perv Street. It's also called Sculpture Street, and that is right behind where this project is going to be located. So this is a really exciting opportunity. But just to paint a picture for you all here, when we moved here in 2001, this area was, as you know, primarily low industrial, was a lot of manufacturing, and we were the highest building on that block. And we were built in 1905 as a trolley repair and trolley power station that powered the trolley that would go on Jackson Avenue. So just like to give this pictures, I think, real important, because you all know this is the fastest growing neighborhood in New York right now. And there is the neighborhood where we were the highest building, now we're the shortest on our block and all around. So that really gives you a picture of how much growth there has been. And as everyone mentioned today, there's really no public space for the neighborhood to use for the dogs, as everyone mentioned, but obviously there's a lot of families moving to the area. So to give you an idea, imagine if you buy a slice of pizza at the corner and you're walking your dog and you go to the pickleball or take your kids to the playground, you can also walk through Sculpture Center and have this all-encompassing recreational, but also cultural and educational experience. And I think something like this really doesn't exist in a city, that this kind of symbiotic relationship between this a form of urban development and also a cultural institution, one of the oldest in the cities, that'd be like, it's naturally connected to it. So we're really excited about this, and we're really happy to have, we've been in conversation with a lot of constituents, including everyone who is involved in development of this site, the DOT, the Studio V, and everyone, to make sure that we can meet the demands of this moment. So thank you so much for your attention and enthusiasm around this. Right.
Chelsea, do we have anybody else signed up?
No, we do not have anyone else signed up. If anyone has not signed up but is in the Zoom room and wants to testify, please use the raise hand feature. Okay, we have Laura Rothrock. You are unmuted. Please begin with your name and affiliation and keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, PDC commissioners. My name is Laura Rothrock, and I'm the president of the Long Island City Partnership and executive director of the Long Island City Bid. Today, I'm pleased to speak in support of item 29854, the Dutch Kills open space. Long Island City, as you've heard, is one of the fastest growing and most actively developing districts in the country. In the past decade, the neighborhood increased 2 times faster than New York City in jobs, and residential growth increased more than 5 times the rate of New York City. While this growth is amazing, the prioritization of green space and other public amenities such as the playground and dog run has not followed. In fact, Queens Community Board 2 has only 1% of the district area allocated to parkland, making it the 3rd lowest ranked community board in a 2021 New Yorkers for Parks survey. It's the Long Island City community's desire for green space that made this open space the #1 request from both the City Council and the Community Board when in 2018, the adjacent development site went through ULURP. The commitment by DOT and the developer to complete this space and the design presented today reflect the goals of the Long Island City Partnership for additional open space. The planned programming, playground, dog run, and flexible art space help to support the residential and commercial growth in the area. Additionally, the creation of the nonprofit to ensure that this space is properly maintained aligns with the bid's goals to improve Long Island City quality of life and does not create an additional burden for the bid. We encourage the Commission to approve this project as it will bring desired community programming to the site and reimagines a previous parking lot as a community hub. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional members seeking to testify?
There are no additional hands, so I think we can proceed.
Thank you. We will now move on to the discussion portion, commissioners.
Thank you, Shriyoshi. So I believe we'll start with Commissioner Van Bramer.
Thank you. So thank you to the team. What's hard to believe for me is that the image that we're looking at is now and has been for so many years a parking lot and storage area, and to see it transformed into a beautiful park and playground for the community is a beautiful thing to see. It is a long time coming. I want to stress that this came from the community. This is up from the grassroots, from all of the families with young children who are living in those buildings that have made Sohrab's institution the smallest building on that block. They desperately need park space. It is very hard to come by in Long Island City, and this was an out-of-the-box proposal and way to achieve it. I also just want to say it is very, very rare in the city of New York when the local community, the civic organization, cultural organizations, the community board, the partnership and the bid, all of the elected officials all come together to agree. This is not controversial. Everybody wants this to happen, and that is refreshing to see in the city of New York. And Councilmember Wan was very generous, and I know she's deeply invested in this project, and I appreciate that. I also want to just stress, she said something, I'm not sure everyone could hear it, that the community is growing, so is the AAPI community here. And the fact that the playground is culturally inclusive and thoughtful regarding this emerging community in Long Island City is also incredibly important and just really, really thoughtful on the part of the team that came together to produce this. So I know that my other commissioners will have incredibly important comments on some of the technical aspects of it that can make this project even better. But it is an incredibly good thing to know that this will be coming to the Court Square, Dutch Kills, Long Island City community. And I just think a lot of work came in, a lot of people came together to do this, and I think it'll be a beautiful thing for this community.
Thank you. And also, I want to say we're delighted that the team now includes a landscape architect. We're thrilled to have you on the team. So I think we do have a few questions about some of the technical details. So Isabel, do you want to take that?
I'll start. Thank you again. Very exciting project. And I'm also really interested in how this project will develop, because it can become an example for developments of open spaces in many similar parts of the city. So a very exciting moment. I do have a couple of key questions, mostly on the detailing that I want to raise, so that you're able to think about them as you move on through the next stages of design. And I also do want to thank you for being very receptive to our comments in the past. My first series of questions or comments have to do with the playground. I think it's very exciting that you're bringing Monstrum on board. We know they can do great, high quality, creative work. But the level of detail of the drawings that you're providing, it's difficult to judge. The plan doesn't match the renderings. The renderings are missing other key playground components like the fences, the benches. It does feel like it will be sunny and will benefit from planting. So I know you recognize all of those details. And I would say just, are things we noticed as well. And we look forward to seeing the next evolution of work to see how their ideas, along with all of the standard things that playgrounds require, come together in a cohesive design expression. So I'm just going to leave it at that. My second series of questions have to do mostly with understanding the capping of the site. Why is it capped? Where is it capped? And how does that relate to what's going on above the cap? With particular concern that you have a series of materials that are typically permeable. The dog's surface, the playground safety surface, and particularly the planters, the mounted planters, they're all shown to be over asphalt, which is going to make them very tricky to detail design-wise. Specifically, the dog mound and the planters will receive a significant amount of water. So I would like to understand how you're thinking of resolving this, or you did allude to the idea of maybe revisiting the cap in some places. How's the evolution of that thought process going?
And so I'll turn it over to the team to talk through some of the details that are working. Obviously, we are under the ramp to the Queensboro Bridge. Bridge structures in New York City had traditionally been painted with lead for many, many years. We do expect there to be, some amount of potential for lead in the soil, hence the goal for there being the asphalt cap. Just to be clear, and I think the existing plan shows it best, the area that's over to the sort of backside closest to Sunnyside Yards is already asphalt. That's where the parking lot for the NYPD school safety vehicles were. The area towards the front, closer to Jackson Avenue, is actually open soil right now. It's been used for construction, staging, and storage, but it is open. So the initial standpoint from DOT, just to guard against any possibility of risk, we wanted to make sure that the entire site was asphalt and that we could build the design up from there. I think through working with the team, through many of the stakeholders, in order to support some of the really great programming that's being proposed, I think we're looking at trying to do targeted areas to penetrate and remediate any soil that is found. The team has brought on Langen as a civil as well as environmental counsel. So I think we're pretty confident, and the team is pretty confident that the risk is relatively low. So that way we can make those kinds of targeted penetrations for the permeable pavement, for the playground, to deal with drainage in a way that is consistent with best practices. And obviously those details are still evolving. This is moving very fast. And so we're excited to see how the planting and how the playground, the dog run, and how those things evolve to make sure we can accommodate that drainage in a way that works.
That's great news, Nick. And I would say, having worked on other projects are also contaminated there's different ways in which you can cap them with safety surface or with amounts of soil. So I would just encourage you, if possible, to look at that, because I do worry that weep holes at a scale of impermeability here may actually cause more of a problem than a solution. And I do think specifically, just thinking, forward environmentally, if we're able to cap with planting, if we're able to cap with permeable surfaces where you're not able to get to the soil, not able to touch it, I think it would be a much more environmentally forward solution than hard pipe drainage. If it's not possible, because I know you still need to look into that, I would strongly suggest you look at area drains within the planters. I do worry those planters might get too saturated with poles eventually stop working. So we do want the planting to be successful throughout. My second question has to do mostly with the stormwater management of the downspouts. I'm the lead designer for the underline. I am designing the Bentway Phase 2. So unfortunately, I have way too much experience with this. And the main challenge that we find on both projects is that the water, when it comes down from the downspouts, comes down at a very rapid pace, extremely aggressive water. To the point that we have not been able to create a solution for planting beds. They get extremely eroded. You don't have that issue here. But the second issue we're finding is that the quality of the water is very poor. It's usually carrying a significant amount of sediment from the roadway above, a significant amount of oils, and other contaminants from the roadway. So my question to you is whether you have evaluated the water quality of these specific downspouts to assess what is coming down and how it may impact the surface. Because right now it's just running as a sheet flow onto asphalt and permeable pavement. So it could be that the pavement is going to be significantly dirty, major storm events. But I also worry that if this roadway does carry a large amount of sediments, like we see on other downspouts around the city, that the permeable pavement is gonna clog more rapidly than it is intended to be. And I worry that it's not going to work as effectively as you're thinking. So I'm interested to know if you've done that research, what are your thoughts on some of these concerns?
So we do have James from Langen here to talk about some of the technical aspects on the drainage component. And I think this is something we at DOT are equally concerned about and want to make sure that it's done right. I think we benefit a little bit from the fact that this is just an on-ramp to the Queensboro Bridge. The size of the ramp compared to under the Gowanus or under the BQE, for example, is less. So the amount of stuff that's coming out still going to be an issue, right? Not trying to discount that, but we have some benefits there. And I think the other obviously important factor here is we do have a dedicated not-for-profit with maintenance funding up front, and part of our submission back to you for final approval will include that detailed maintenance plan, because I think we are assuming that there is going to be a need for more frequent cleaning of the permeable pavement if that's the final solution. And I think the team is still interested in looking at what other ways we could potentially slow that water down or deal with it as it's coming out of the downspout. So those are all sort of the fine tuning of this that we're definitely looking at as part of this next submission. And then James, I don't know if you want to talk about the water quality piece.
Sure. So slide how further along it is, but essentially the blue squares that you saw, the permeable pavement is designed to treat for the DEP minimum stormwater event using the DOB minimum infiltration rate. So we've tackled that area. Water is going to drain to that permeable pavement, and the pavement is designed to remove about 60%. I don't want to get too technical of the silt suspended solids that you're talking about. But yes, for cleaning, it just as Nick and everyone else has mentioned, maintenance is the key. DEP has a minimum of twice a year. This will obviously have to be more frequent, and it'll be budgeted to be more frequent. Just to vacuum out the pores within the porous pavement, and then continues to act as it's designed to do.
There are also some drain inlets at the southern, eastern end of the site, so
Right.
those are going to be the place if it's a Cheetos permeable.
But
Also to be
have you
maintained.
done any water quality testing on what's coming down from the downspouts to understand the specific site?
Whoever's speaking, please speak into the mic.
You want me to repeat that? Yes, sure. There are also drain inlets on the eastern edge of the site, which will accept water that percolates through the play surface.
And then, again, to answer your specific question on the water quality, no, not yet, right? Like, I'm not
But
trying
you
to
plan
skirt the
to.
question. I think that that's something where as DOT, we have a general sense of the water that's coming out, and we can certainly talk more with the folks at DEP as we get into the construction and actual implementation of this. We can build that into some of those protocols as well.
The only thing I'd add is your comments are well taken, that we're really looking for a balanced approach. So we're coming back to it, the final details, but between the combination, because we looked at the projects you mentioned and we saw that the planters were failing. So we moved away from a planter-based solution because we've seen other examples of that didn't work. We're looking for this solution with the permeable pavement, which we think will work in conjunction with the maintenance plan, and we'll make sure to forward those details to you. And then finally, working with DOT on the evolution of doing some more in-ground planting, we think we can also capture more of that stormwater and do groundwater recharge, which we think will be a good thing. So with a combination of these things, it's a tough problem, frankly, but we think we're taking a pretty balanced approach, and we look forward to coming back with final on that with the technical details.
Okay, yeah, we look forward to that as well. I will tell you again, porous pavement has not worked for us on other projects, so that's why I want to see this project be successful. I just urge you to really evaluate the quality of the water. These are very challenging sites, and what we've ended up doing on other projects is hard piping them underground to big storage tanks that then eventually seep into the subgrade to be environmentally responsible, just because the water is nasty. So not something you want on your main paving service. So just keep that in mind.
Nick, is that even something that's in your palette of,
Well, so funny enough, actually, at this site, as part of our L-space work, we did a pilot to install gabion planters under two downspouts. They're actually outside of this site. They were on the public sidewalk, because actually before we even did that, there was literally no sidewalk there at all. And obviously we were seeing what was coming out. So we have, I think, some evaluation data from that in terms of the amount of debris, the water that was coming, the sort of success of that we can share with the commission as part of the next submission. I think at least anecdotally, the observations here are the water is not as bad as we've seen in lots of other places. It's not great by any means. But it's because I think of the quality or the typology of the roadway here being just an on-ramp with sort of limited traffic. It is a little bit different than some of the much more excessive, I think, issues that we see on, again, like under the Gowanus. We did a similar test under the BQE in Industry City, and there we had much, much larger planters because of the volumes that were coming off of that. So it's been interesting just to even see those comparisons.
Yeah, I think, I'm assuming the design team has seen the results of those test as well. Just think about it. I don't want all of this investment to happen and then have a extremely dirty surface all the time.
Yeah.
Just because of this. So just give it some thought.
Thank you.
other questions or comments from other commissioners? Meryl?
I was reading about the tenting issues in Long Island City. And the space that you're creating is just extraordinary, and it has extraordinary potential. I myself grew up playing handball under the Williamsburg Bridge, and trust me, no one created this kind of park for us. So I just think it's fantastic. That being said, what are the hours that this is going to have access to the public? And what is going to be done to make sure that it doesn't become a quality of life issue for the people you're trying to serve?
Yeah, and I think this is a great question and something that we at DOT have been thinking about a lot as well. Obviously, much of our public space in the right of way is open 24/7, right? It's underused roadway. This is a little different in that it has sort of control, right? So
my point is, we're just a design commission.
yeah. No,
I'm
it's a
just
great point
asking
though.
if you tell me you're thinking it through, believe me, Nick, even though no one else here likes you, I haven't told you.
I'm devastated. Wow.
That being said,
Thank you, Commissioner.
if you're thinking it through, it's really important because you're doing something that's really so significant to the community.
Yeah.
You want it to be able to serve the community.
Yeah. No, and we are thinking through that piece and trying to find the right balance here. Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure.
For the record, I like Nick.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I like Nick too.
Thank you.
Manuel?
So my comments are more So I have a couple of comments around maybe more creative direction. So I know this is very much in dialogue visually with a park in Denmark called Superkylen. And so as we move forward, I mean, I think the idea of like this being a former river and you're articulating that with the lines, I think is a great idea. But, you know, moving forward, if we can articulate those lines or the graphics in some way so it distinguishes itself in that park, I think that would be great. The other thing was the kind of dragon. So there's this piece with a van that looks like it's being destroyed. I don't know if that's like a Godzilla thing or something, but
Well, we're working with Monstrom to advance that, and looks like we're going to pivot from a dragon to more of that water dragon theme with a riverine habitat and a boat for imaginary play for the young children.
okay.
So your comments are well taken.
Or a positive approach where, you know, the dragon is interacting with the children, which we think will be great.
That sounds good.
That's
Because,
the
you know, this
direction.
bridge
I
is
like the dark
overhead.
humor, but
Yeah. With the bridges overhead and,
Yeah.
you know, cars coming off. Yeah, it kind of speaks to that. So, okay, thank you.
Lori.
I like Nick too, so just one question. You didn't mention painting the underside. Are you painting? What's going on with that? And then like, what is the general, you know, because we have this situation on the east side where there's like all different kinds of things going on. So I'm curious what's going on with the.
At present, we're not painting it. We considered that. And there are other examples such as the underline, which has painted small portions of the bridge. At the moment, it's not part of our application, just because we're trying to be very mindful to make sure we can get this executed on our budget. But, you know, it's something we could consider, but it's not in at the moment.
One quick question about the pickleball court, sorry. But people who, their biggest complaint about pickleball is the noise, the repetitive noise that comes out of that. And so I'm just curious, have you looked at all at how that is going to echo because you're underneath the bridge, or the sound will be amplified also? And it's, as someone who was near a pickleball court, it's not a fun noise to listen to all day long. So, and if you have parents, you know, sitting in the playground, it's going to impact them, I think.
We did locate them on the far side, but I guess it's true that given the constraints of the site and the fact that we're working around it between all the bridge structure, we did want to accommodate all the different uses. And so we felt it was more important to respond to the community, include those uses. So I'm not sure that I could really mitigate the sound for that. We also only have one pickleball court as opposed to a whole group of them, because I think when you get a whole bunch of them, I think it kind of amplifies the noise and makes it louder. So perhaps by just having one, we think it'll have less of an impact.
Anyone else before I summarize? Okay, great. So thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you so much for hearing our comments earlier on and for integrating them into this submission. I want to echo Commissioner Van Bramer's comments that this is not only really important for this community and answering in a very sensitive and thoughtful way their needs, but, you know, our population is increasing as a city, and more we're going to need to use these peripheral and liminal spaces for all kinds of purposes. So we, as a commission, would want to encourage you and to encourage the owners who I know are funding the maintenance, which is like a very unusual thing and really spectacular, to think about doing with DOT some evaluation, because in the rail yards nearby and then across the city where there are these kind of under spaces, your experience will be very helpful for others. And we just don't have a lot of data as a city around the performance of these kind of spaces. When you come back next time, we would like to see, we know that and again, all of our comments are directed towards making sure that the community gets what it needs, and that the promise of this is realized in its performance. So our comments are really largely around, one, the drainage, and you have said you would come back with details, so we know we'll see that. We'd love to know what's in that water from the downspout, and even if you can get some like a water budget would be helpful in understanding, like, if in fact, because it is a side entrance, it would have less. And really, as I'm sure you want that data too. And then water quality as well. The detailed maintenance plan, and then, as Merrill raised, perhaps thinking about security and how the site is maintained after hours or just kept active. You referred to it earlier with the dog park, that will help. And the more is more when it comes to these sites, that's just ringing the chime. So that's not your time. And then finally, some creative elements in terms of you addressed the, we'll just wait for 11. I feel like we now can have like the Nutcracker dance or something. Okay, addressing the question of, the playground, you're dealing with that. You said the question of paint, whether or not you answered that question, and evaluating the sound from the pickleball court. That'd be great to hear something about that in your next presentation. And then finally, I just want to come back to this issue that this is, from our perspective, it's a really important site, not just because it's meeting needs in a very underserved community for more open space, but also because what it represents for what we can do across the city for spaces that are really very much compromised by by roadways, which are common across our city. So we'd love for this to become a model. And for that, we're going to need some evaluation data. So we just encourage you to think about how to collect that. So with that, if there are no other comments from commissioners, I will now take a roll call vote on item 29854, preliminary review of the construction of an open space under the ramps at Dutch Kill Street in Long Island City, Queens. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Casilla.
Approve.
Lori Hawkinson.
Approved.
Karen Keel.
Approved.
Carrie Maloney.
Approved.
Manuel Miranda.
Approved.
Meryl Tisch. Approved. Jimmy Van Bramer.
With great pride, I approve.
And I also approve. So let the record show we have unanimous approval for this excellent project. Congratulations on your great work.
Thank you very much, the commission. Thank you.
We'll be back momentarily while the next team arrives.
Great. Okay. The next public hearing item is item number 29855, preliminary review of the construction of the Soundview Park Recreation Center in Soundview Park at Lafayette Avenue between Morrison Avenue and Metcalf Avenue in the Bronx. Per standard procedure, applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants. And we can now proceed with the presentation. Welcome.
So I'm Darlene Montgomery. I'm here from Snøhetta. I'm one of the directors and a landscape architect, and I'm here with my colleague from architecture, Aaron Walker, as well as Talk, who's here to answer questions. Soundview Park Recreation Center is at the northernmost node of Soundview Park along the Bronx River, which is it's a 220-acre recreation park. Because it has so much active recreation, we had the idea of fitting our project into the park as sort of like a trailhead so that it would elevate the experience that you had of the park itself and connect to other program. This was our previous limit of work line. We've expanded it a little bit to protect more trees and to better feather in the network of pathways into the park. This is the pedestrian network, and the star represents the entrance, and we'll go through the rationale for that. There are many ways that you can see Soundview Park from the north, from the bus stops on Story, as well as exiting the parkway. And then we're privileging these views to the south to make it more of the park. There we go. So we chose the site that we did to minimize the disturbance to mature trees in the park, as well as to connect to the utilities on Metcalf. Sure. We chose the site at the lower left, or sorry, lower right, to minimize disturbance to the existing mature trees, as well as to connect to the utilities along Metcalf. This was a previous assessment of tree disruption that we were showing, and it has since been validated by an arborist report that the main difference is that the critical root zones of these trees has expanded. We also chose this site because it's the high point and there is some flooding along Story Avenue. We looked at the solar gain opportunities and are putting PV panels on the roof to utilize that. This is a site section looking south. You can see the utility connections on Metcalf, as well as the scale of the NYCHA housing across the street. Here, I'll go through some views. These are views from Story Avenue. You can see the key map at the bottom right and the bus lane there. From Story and Metcalf, looking south to the park, and you can see the neighboring condos on Morrison. Again, from looking to our site itself, our nearest neighbor, the condos, and then the timber fence that wraps around the whole site. And then these are the two neighbors, the closest neighbors, the NYCHA housing on the left and the condominiums on the right. And then this is the Birch Grove at the southern end at the east-west path that looks south to the ball fields. And then looking right to our site from the entrance on Story and then along the pathway to the site, the clearing itself.
So this project has many goals. It's a really unique program, an interior rec center within the park. So inclusivity is front of mind for this rec center. It provides enrichment to the community for both exercise program, but also educational program. And because we're in a park, we're really trying to maximize this connection to nature. It serves as a gateway to the rest of the park, as Darlene mentioned, acting as a trailhead for people to gather and orient themselves to the rest of Soundview Park. When we began looking at the program and putting that building within the site, we thought about first what it is to have a building in the park, but then thought more about this as a park, bringing the park into the building, and so how we can set back the building to sort of respond to the existing context and scale, and sort of break down the scale. This was an earlier diagram. This reflects the latest profile of the building. So beginning to sort of articulate the crown of the building, have an identifiable sort of silhouette, but something that's a little more dynamic, less static, something that has views to the rest of the park. So this is the initial or the conceptual review, the axonometric view, where it was building it had a three-part T. And in our last meeting, we introduced the simplifications that the team was looking at to the massing. Here we had a sloped roof where the building set back. And now I'll go to the updated version. So it's more of a two-part T. The base of the building is clad in brick, and then the upper volume is still that metal panel rain screen, where we now have a flat roof at level 2, complying with sustainable roofing zone. That's also featuring the photovoltaic panels that we have on the upper roof. Some of the other updates here, you can just see the updates to the fenestration, which we've kind of developed the language for. And then the mechanical well that still exists at that upper right corner of the building.
So this is the previous site plan we had presented. We were trying to fit the project into the park naturally. We think we've been able to massage the network of pathways as well as the planting strategy so that it better feathers into the rest of the park and feels like it's always been there. These were the tree species that we had chosen previously by looking at what had really been thriving in the rest of the park. But again, we've been able to feather them out and make them feel like they're part of the original park planting. Again, these were our pathways that were really more like a placemat in the park of concrete and asphalt, and we've adapted those to better integrate with the geometry and the materiality of the existing park paths.
This is an program adjacency diagram that we looked at in our previous meeting that informed sort of the organization of the program within the building. So we'll go through the floor plans. The program elements have largely remained in their same location, so the distribution is similar, or is the same. You'll see some refinements at the ground floor, where we have the largest exercise program, including the cardio room, strength room, and gymnasium. You'll see that the lobby is really sculpted into more of a space in and of itself. There's actually a double height space, which we'll see on the second floor to bring in natural light. And then we've relocated one of the stairs that now exists at the end of the corridor on the ground floor and is open to the west to bring in natural light and views from the park. So we're really trying to enhance these stairs and try to promote active design, and then use of interior glazing to help with intuitive wayfinding. This was the previous second floor plan, the running track above the gym. You'll see we've swapped the dance room and the stretch and spin room, and it really gives, I think, more of an active presence on Metcalf to display the stretch and spin room. And we have a nice proportion to the dance room with views towards the park at the south. Here you can see that double height space above the lobby and the offices here. the PV panels on the level 2 setback. And then level 3 is where we have the classroom, the multi-purpose program. So this is all the after-school program, the teen room. This remains the same. We've really added in some more program elements here, the dividers showing all of the tables and desks here. And just more of the programmatic elements we've worked to coordinate with mechanical systems as well. At the roof, still maximizing PV. And the roof plan here, you now see that the stair that goes up to the roof is more sort of inset and less prominent from the perimeter of the building. This is a previous section. You can just see that level of development here showing the thicknesses, the assemblies. This is cut through the lobby, so you can see that double height space where the light is coming in from above. And this section, which is looking east, you can see the difference in height of the 2 volumes, the 3rd story volume and the gym. Previous exterior elevations, again, this was showing that 3-part RT. Oops. There you go. This is the east elevation now, simplified, showing just that 2-part part T, the base of brick, where we're using just a simple sort of change in the brick coursing to signify the entry, which is slightly set in, just 3 feet, just to have a little awning of protection there at the base. And then the building silhouette above, which sets back at the metal panel. And then on the west, you can see that break, which is expressed at the egress stair B. And you can see how the datums adjust. These are the larger north and south elevations previously, and then the updates at the north. On the left, you can see this is the mechanical well. There's opportunities to introduce signage here, signaling from afar. And then at the south, really trying to kind of portray this as a civic gesture, like this is a classroom space above. So where the building facade actually is sloped here, and it kind of creates a different experience, the way that the light is being sort of diffused off of that facade. We're also, a performance opportunity is to have a deeper mullion system for solar heat gain and introducing ceramic frit there. These are the previous facade systems. And you can see how these have developed. On the left, this is at the gym, showing the running track mezzanine. And then on the right is at the south, where the building sets back and the classrooms above. And we'll just go through some of the previous and the current renderings. So this is from the northeast approach, looking towards the building entrance. The update here, kind of taking that language of the east corners, really trying to create this building that doesn't have a backside, but it's really viewed in the round, and carrying that up above into the metal panel here. At the northwest, this is the northwest approach from Story Avenue. We've really reduced some of that glazing, the west-facing glazing, just through coordination and analysis of glare, and trying to kind of, minimize any unwanted glare in the gym, but really kind of creating this identity from this view here. At the southwest, coming from the park, you can see, just how refined the language of the fenestration has become here, and these simple gestures, just like that break at the stair, to kind of break down the massing and the scale of the building. Yeah. 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 So the materials that we have on the table are the accent bricks, which are the 8 small tile samples that we have. So we have some slides that we'll get to sort of break down the facade, but the brick is meant to be sort of a green field brick that has accent bricks that are sprinkled throughout. So this is just a range of colors that we're considering to be sprinkled throughout the facade. We're looking at different percentages and how they're just where they're concentrated, looking to concentrate the colors mainly at the entrances to the main entrance and the exterior restroom at the south. But this is showing just sort of a, just that intent of just having sort of just a sprinkle of the accents. Yep.
What is
Yeah.
the overall?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is the overall here?
Yeah. We're working to create the base brick right now with some manufacturers. The green brick is not shown here at the
But you
table.
don't have a piece of the color or something?
Yeah, we have the samples that we've shared, and we're getting sample boards made right now. But it's not a standard. We don't have that color, or we don't have the brick
You don't have
here.
like a change the more color.
We have 4 Pantone colors that we've shared. Yeah, please.
It's a lengthy process, so we're working with 2 manufacturers and they can do Pantone colors,
Yeah.
any color. But of course, there's a little bit of a back and forth. So we're working with them, and unfortunately, we haven't gotten the sample in time. But
Is it like one of the, we're just trying to
Great
get
to
it.
get a share
Yeah,
your path.
it's hard
I mean,
to-
I do this too, so I'd love
Yeah.
to see just some little piece of what.
Yeah.
But
Is it
not to
sort of
interrupt your
like that?
presentation, sorry.
No, it's
Just
okay.
over here.
And then the metal, is there?
Yeah, so that's the metal sample. That's a stainless steel sample from Pole. It's a linen finish. And so it has some texture on it. Go
And
ahead.
it goes where?
That goes on the upper volume, so levels 2 to 3. Yep.
Okay. Please continue. Thank you.
No, yeah, of course, yeah. And then this was the previous view from the south, from the southeast, where we have the enhanced crosswalk, the update view here showing the Orso Grill parking, which we've worked with Parks to develop, trying to also in response to PDC comments, trying to kind of make that more of the language of the building, and using the same color to try to better match the brick. We have just a series of rendered views on each elevation. Just we'll go through this as the east. So we've looked at signage. We've worked with our signage consultant here. We'll get into those diagrams in just a minute. Looking from the north at the running track that has this ribbon window that wraps all the way around to the west. And then at the south, again, showing the classrooms above, and you can see the exterior restrooms below. Opportunities also for some introduction of color and more playful brick there. So these previous diagrams, I think the concepts are still true, where we were really looking for the base to be more of the ground and looking at the sky above for the beacon effect at the upper volume. Now we've simplified this and sort of cut out that middle ribbon. So it's really just these 2 elements. These were previous diagrams that we showed, just sort of this textural quality of the brick, having something that's more tactile and durable at the base, something that's inviting and welcoming to approach. So this is just an enlarged view of the brick, and you can see like changing the coursing of the brick at the base to the soldier brick, and then introducing these accents throughout. So as Talk mentioned, yes, we're working to hone in on what that, the brick blend is there. But these are just some enlarged views of the samples that are on the table. We're working mainly with a couple of manufacturers, but this Glengarry, these samples that are on the table, there's a variety of different finishes. So all of them will be glazed, and we know that with working with Parks, we need to have a glazed brick also that's best for maintenance. And whether it's smooth or matte will have a different effect. This was previous images of that standing seam sloped roof that we no longer have on the project. But looking also at different finishes and different specs, different manufacturers for the metal panel. And we're working with Pole to understand what precedents are in the city that have used these products.
Do you have an example of the pole?
Of the one that we have.
Did something fly by, an example of
that? We don't have an example of in the presentation. No, this was there was a previous slide, but yeah. Playing off of this 2-part party with signage, at the brick, we have 2 entrances, so the main entrance and the exterior restrooms. We have a smaller Parks leaf logo that's embedded in the brick.
and a larger Parks Leaf logo that's up in the metal volume on the north and the west. So that has to do with just sort of the pedestrian scale, addressing the pedestrian scale at the brick below and the vehicular scale from above. So those are the leaves in elevation. And then we've worked with Parks also just to understand preferences on pinned metal letter signage for the building ID.
And so this is just an updated site plan with the revised parking area. We're working and validating kind of a larger buffer around this parking area. And we're able to do that by dipping the east-west path down, but we're working with DEP right now. This is kind of a late coming addition, so we can update you when that's validated. We're really trying to protect that tree at the north and make the pedestrian experience around this parking area as nice as possible. The network of pathways really was influenced by the shapes that were already there, as well as these ovals at the entrances now. So we've replicated the ovals at the entrances and exits of the building. And then placed benches, all seating looking away from the building so that, again, it's like this belvedere to the rest of the park. And then we're doing kind of an underground bedding field for all of our stormwater management, which allows for passive recreation and a more greener, sustainable strategy for stormwater management here. We're using there is no lighting in this part of the park right now, so we are introducing these standard light poles that are found elsewhere in Soundview Park. And then standard furnishings, trash, bike and water bottles, benches. And then this is the Orso Grill fence. We have coordinated the excuse me, green color to match the green color of the brick, which is a standard for them and easily replaceable. We've also coordinated the height of the fence to be at the bottom elevation of the door, so it looks like it's more of the whole project.
And then last, this is just a diagram showing the percent for art opportunities for the project, which was presented to the community board on December 3rd. So recently, right now we're looking at the lobby, and because we have this double height space, there's opportunities for suspended artwork. Also the running track, the wall above the running track, which through the ribbon window is highly visible from the park, even though it's not physically accessible. It's sort of this 360 panorama wall that has curved corners. That's a really nice opportunity for any sort of mural. In speaking with DCLA, we look to expand opportunities, and so maybe there's secondary locations within the enhanced egress stairs to introduce artwork. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now check for testimony. Is there anybody in person present? Seeing nobody present in person, Chelsea, has anyone signed up for remote testimony?
There's no one signed up for remote testimony. Is anyone within the Zoom room here to testify? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing that there are no hands, I think we can proceed.
Thank you. Now we can move on to the discussion portion. Commissioners?
Commissioners, comments? Lori?
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful design in general, and I wanted to thank you for the presentation. So so the question about the material is, I mean, I think it looks super interesting in that one detail that you showed of the wall with the brick. I guess that's what you're going for. I'm just going to zoom in on some specific questions, right? So that back there, that's it. Okay, so we're gonna find out more about the actual hue and value
Right.
of the brick. with
That's
the
right. Yeah, yeah, we've,
Surface paint.
right, yeah, so
Yeah.
we'd like to, yeah, and talk, feel free to chime in. But we've studied we've looked at standard brick colors, but we really want to have a natural variation or a variegated sort of texture on the brick. We don't want this to be just like a monotone
Got that.
green.
I think it's a
right?
great idea.
Yeah,
And that's the dimension of the brick?
we're looking at a standard brick dimension at this point.
Standard brick.
Yeah.
So, okay, so just, and
Is
then
this-
you have this stainless steel. I mean, that's probably the most, which adjective should I use? Controversial material
Stain-
because of its potential reflectivity. I mean, I love stainless steel myself.
Mhm.
Love it. I'd live in a total stainless steel apartment if I could. But I'm just wondering, how that will be as a reflective surface.
Yeah.
And then I have another question about the, turning back of the building to be orthogonal. You had it kind of cranked. I thought it was very dynamic.
Mhm.
I mean, is all this because you were over budget, if I dare say?
No.
What happened? I
We-
mean, you had this kind of dynamic entry and maybe it has to do with the landscape issues. I don't know. You moved away from that plan. You didn't really discuss it. You just said, oh, this is what we have now.
Yeah,
But
let me go back to a
I
site
didn't
plan.
know why. Yeah, so you can flip between those two. Like that.
There we go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so what happened or just what was the story there?
Mhm.
We were trying to get, the building expanded a little bit, and that it's deceptive because these aren't at the same scale, these two slides.
Oh.
But we were trying to get more room around the parking area and just have more of an urban face to Metcalf. And have more of a park face for the other sides. It also meant that we could stay away from this, like the huge London plane tree on the north.
Mm.
And so there were site constrictions with critical root zones, as well as just the ability to build the building without impacting the crowns of the trees around there.
But you didn't, I mean, you could shift the upper volume, for instance, but you kept them both orthogonal, if I'm correct.
I wanted to just go to the floor plans here,
Yeah,
the ground floor.
Like the roof
and
plan
just-
or something.
Yeah, and it's hard to see here, but yes, the footprint of the building due to just some program expansions that happened at the ground floor. Might be kind of hard to see, but the building really did had to grow in the north-south direction as well. Locker rooms had to expand and we've had to introduce accessible plumbing chases throughout the building, which have really added some square footage. Yeah, we did go back and forth. There were, I think, a series of meetings where we were looking at the building orientation in true north-south, which it had been, or matching to the street grid and really addressing sort of and having more of a civic presence along Metcalf, which is through discussions with parks, I think was favorable.
So civic means parallel.
Parallel.
I see. And then question about the glazing. So
Sure.
I see Parks had a comment about worried about too much glazing or glare. Is that true?
And they were
I mean,
concerned
you wanna
with
bring as much light in a building like this
Yeah.
as possible, right? Daylight is a great thing for all these activities.
That's
So,
right.
but understandably, south and all that needs some protection in some way, but you can still have windows.
Yeah, I think we were still able to maximize windows on the south, which is advantageous, obviously, in cooler months as well.
South is this way.
This page down, yeah. It was the west. I think the biggest change from a fenestration standpoint was, well, we've certainly refined the language of fenestration throughout the building where we have more of these sort of typical windows at the ground floor. We have a ribbon window now at the running track. We've just eliminated the huge expanse of glazing that we had on the west facade.
Which
And there were
is coming
concerns
into the
about glare
For the gymnasium.
for the gymnasium and controlling
So that was a
daylight.
bad thing.
This,
Negative.
yeah, I mean, there were just concerns about unwanted daylight and glare and not being able to control the light in that space, which may want. We had a glare analysis that was done as well. Yeah, just right.
I mean, I didn't know if it was a cost thing.
Certainly cost has been back of or front of mind, but yeah.
Because there are ways of mitigating glare on the windows, obviously, with shades or pulling them in or, you know, overhangs and.
Right.
So just curious about that. It looks very, you know, closed over here on this.
Yeah,
elevation.
I think parks had really strict ideas about overhangs and not creating overhangs. So
They don't like overhangs.
yeah, they don't make overhangs.
I mean, I think we probably also didn't speak to it so much in this presentation, but yes, like even the evolution of the ground floor and sort of simplifying the transitions, ins and outs, and certainly the massing itself.
But on the upper level, it's not really, it wasn't an overhang, was it?
On the upper level, no.
No. It's the side that's hidden by the trees that I was concerned with on the right. Where it's blank, but yeah, over there. Just, you know, thinking, now that we see these elevations, but I know you're in preliminary, so maybe it's all baked right now. I don't know. And then all of that reflective, so you've got, I mean, I'm just seeing how you take away windows, but now I see the material, you've got this reflective material. So that's to the people outside, but the people inside don't get the light. So I'm just
I should say
thinking about that.
Yeah, I should say, I mean,
dynamic.
we have reduced, I'm not sure that we've reduced glazing overall. I think we've strategically reduced glazing in certain locations that were yielding unwanted, maybe interior, you know, effects and having a more controlled daylighting experience in the gym. But we've not, the windows and the fenestration has been just sort of distributed across the facade. Even just before delivering 100% DD, I know we worked to introduce even more glazing, especially at the ground floor, where even though Parks is concerned with protection, and we have a sacrificial outer layer at the glazing on the ground floor, we still work to introduce more openings.
So I guess then the one that remains.
I can chime in.
Oh, yeah.
No, sorry, just, I think there's a lot of questions about the facade systems.
Yeah.
And so to introduce Ms.
No, for people online.
Okay, can you hear me?
So that
Yeah.
records.
I wasn't here last time for the first presentation. I'm one of the design directors, worked closely with the team on this project. So we haven't really reduced the amount of glazing. I think there's a misunderstanding. We've only reduced it on the west side where we're dealing with excess heat gain at times. So we calibrated the windows there, and then elsewhere we have added actually windows. So, you know, like over here, this is the dance room. This has actually more glazing now than before. And then your question about the reflective material, the stainless. So this is one finish. You can see that it's not a mirror finish. It's not even, it doesn't have a kind of like a number 4 finish. It's embossed. It's called linen. It's a process. It's almost stamped to have this texture. And it's been used all over the city. There's actually a building at Bryant Park, a PCF Pecco-Fried building. I think the address is 7 Bryant Park. It's a high rise. That's fully clad. It's on the west side of.
Oh,
of the
Harry
park.
Cox building on the south?
Yeah, Harry Cox building. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's this material, exactly this finish.
I mean, it'd be great. I would just, I mean, well, so, but I'm just, you know, thinking about reflectivity and
Exactly. And
people living there and, you know.
yes,
'cause
yes.
I'm,
No,
you know,
we're
I'm sure you'll do a study of that.
We're studying it, and we'll have mock-ups on site. And we've dealt with this before on other projects, you know, down to the point where we invited the community over, driving by, walking by, and making sure on the different times of day, it's comfortable. It's not creating any.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
always good to see it in.
Exactly, to see it in
rather than
person.
Image.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just.
And then, sorry, last point about your question for the greens. Unfortunately, today, we couldn't bring the color that we ordered. It didn't come in time. But the general idea is all of these colors are colors that are found in the park or
Mhm.
around the park. It's an abstraction of it. So there's not a single green, as my colleagues have said, there's multiple greens. And then the park has other colors, obviously, too. So that's
I
why
think
these
it's a great
these
idea.
sprinkles
I
come
think
in.
it's beautiful. I just was curious about that base color, so I look forward to seeing it. It's
You will
really
see it, and we'll have a
wonderful
mock-up,
idea.
hopefully. So.
Yeah, and I agree with Lori. I love the brick and the idea of the color. I just wanted to add an additional concern with the metal screen. And it's not just people, but vegetation. We're finding in the city that a lot of these reflective, either glass or stainless steel, is actually burning plants because it's reflecting the sun in unexpected ways. So if you do have a software that's able to evaluate that, and if you're doing mockups, just keep that in mind as well. You're doing a great job at trying to preserve all of these existing trees. So we want to make sure those are not impacted by reflectivity or heat from the glazing. And then my last comment, I know you touched upon that, is still the parking lot and the fence. It's great that you're looking at Orso Grill that will be of a color that matches the brick. I think that's a great step forward. But if you're able to bow out the path and put a little bit of planting in front of it, I think that would be even better. Because again, I think with the reoriented plan, you have actually really nestled the building within the park in an extremely successful way. And that parking lot fence feels like a weak point within a really, really beautiful site plan. So anything that can be done to integrate it a little bit more, put some planting in front of it, I think will go a long way. As you know, that is one of the entries to the park, right? So it's not just the experience of those going to the building, but those accessing the park from that walkway.
Commissioners, any other comments? Manuel?
Yeah, just a comment on the signage. I think I like on the lower part how it's integrated into the architecture. When it's on the upper level, given the scale, I think you had 12 feet, and then having it kind of protrude as a kind of attachments with the material makes it feel, a little imposing, I think, in the kind of park environment. I wonder if there's a way to integrate it with the architecture more, or I'm not even sure if you need it necessarily. I mean, I know the other recreation centers have done it, but.
It's a great comment. I'll just stay on these. Initially, yeah, we had looked at the ways that the park's logos could be sort of embossed or imprinted into the material itself instead of being applied. We had discussions with parks about this. We were thinking at the brick, maybe it could be even, embossed in the brick and recessed, and you would reduce connections, you would reduce material. You can go ahead. Yeah. Yes, and so same for at the upper volume, have it be stamped, because that was a process we were already looking at for the treatment of the metal panel itself. In discussions with parks, they have very standard details that they use for their signage, and they really want this to be pinned metal for the lettering and for the logos alike. So they wanted this at the brick and at the upper volume.
Yeah, I mean, I might for parks, I might consider like some adaptation, because I've dealt with this before in other projects where there's a set of standards from one system, and the building already has its own identity. So adapting, the signage to the building materials in some way, I think is a smart thing to do.
There's one opportunity, actually. There's one opportunity where we're still considering doing that a little bit. So there's right here, this sign on the entry facade is actually, there's a niche that's created in the brick, and we are fitting the sign right in there. So it is flush, and it's more integrated rather than just applied randomly. So that is still the desire here.
But yes, I think even the scale, the placement exactly, and how of the metal panel and how that relates then to the joints of the metal panel. These are all things that I think we need to develop, and what those connections are. And the fabrication of those. I mean, we've worked with our signage consultant and to sort of vet the scale of these things. We know when the leaf is this big, what the sort of the stroke of the circle is, and then what the thickness needs to be of that. And if this is a stainless steel facade, it's, we're considering, avoiding dissimilar metals, but yeah, we're having these discussions with.
I mean, I think for a building like this, and you talk about the civic nature, I think integrating the signage into the architecture helps a lot, rather than, because it feels very corporate, where it's one size fits all,
Yeah.
whatever the substrate is, you just apply this one thing. And I just don't think it's necessary personally.
Yeah.
I know that's obviously parks and DDC's, whatever, and prerogative, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further comments? Lori?
I just had one more comment about the artwork. You mentioned some areas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know, I always lament that we get so far and then we point to a wall.
Yeah.
You know, so can we, we think about floors or, as you see the artists that are presented who maybe, I don't know where to look at this point, Michaela, I don't know. Can they be, just kind of encouraged or just, that they may think about other areas? So the lobby is the wall, the ceiling. I mean, it just seems that, there's just it's a big building and there would be a lot of opportunity. Maybe we could just open it up more. That's all. Like the gym, I don't know. Like, why is it just always the court? It's not a federal building where I've dealt with where we have very limited areas where the public goes. They go everywhere here. So I would just encourage that.
Yeah, we looked a lot at having the art be publicly viewable or, and so the relationship to the art to the larger park was something we were really interested in, and having it on the kind of backs of the walls around the running track, having that as kind of the beacon or the signage for the place was something that we were really interested in.
Okay, anything else before I summarize the comments? So I want to start by saying that what you've created here, and the only reason that we were able to comment with the level of granularity that we brought to our comments is because you've created something that's conceptually and formally elegant and accomplishes many things in terms of through the materiality and the form. And the challenge that you had midway through to increase the floor space was a significant one that person speaking for myself, and I think for others, is you resolve that very successfully. So congratulations on the work here. It's a beautiful, beautiful structure. And I personally love the kind of playfulness of those colors, which managed to somehow be playful without being sort of trite. So there's a few comments that we'd love for you to think about in this next round. One has to do with the materials in studying the reflectivity. We talked about that. Also the site plan, the planted buffer next to the parking lot fence, the signage, studying further integration of that park signage. And I think the comment about the art is similar in that there is a sort of, let's call it, level of resolution here in terms of form and material that, like, just applying the art to the surfaces seems like it doesn't really honor the kind of integrity of the architecture. So just thinking about whether there's ways that you can work with the artist to have the art be more integral to the structure is in the same way that you're doing that with your own design elements. So with that, I will now take a roll call vote on item 29855, preliminary review of the construction of the Soundview Park Recreation Center in Soundview Park. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Castilla.
Approve.
Lori Hawkinson.
Approve.
Karen Keel.
Approved.
Carrie Maloney.
Approved.
Manuel Miranda.
Approve.
Meryl Tisch. Approved. Jimmy Van Bramer.
Approve.
And I also approve, so let the record show that the preliminary proposal for the Soundview Park Recreation Center is unanimously approved, and congratulations on this beautiful, beautiful structure. Okay,
We will be back momentarily for our next item. Us are here. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. We are now ready to come back momentarily. Thank you for your patience. We have everybody here. Great. Over to you, Deb. Yeah.
The next public hearing item is item number 29856, preliminary review of the reconstruction of the 79th Street Boat Basin, including the construction of a boathouse at the Riverside Park and the Hudson River between 80th Street and 73rd Street, Manhattan. This project fronts historic Riverside Park, a designated scenic landmark. However, the Landmarks Preservation Commission does not have purview over the overwater areas along Riverside Park past the bulkhead line. Per standard procedure, the applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants, and we can now proceed with the presentation. Welcome. There you go.
Hey. Good morning, commissioners and members of the community. I'm Gail Rothstein from EDC, and your presenter today is Adam Urinsky from ARO. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us today. I'm going to present the project focusing on the dock house itself. So I'm going to skip through the early slides, but I can obviously come back to them or stop if there's any questions about the overall marina, which is where the dock house is located. So just as a point of reference in terms of the size of the proposal we're talking about today, which is 3,800 square feet overall, this is about a 40% reduction from the prior one-story design, which was presented about 3 years ago to the Public Design Commission. And it's larger than the existing for reasons of the expansion of the marina and other issues of capacity that are explained in the written submission that we included in the presentation. We were brought onto the team about 2 years ago as design architect, and we recently completed presentations to the Community Board 7, as well as a SHPO review of the project as well. And so I'll be presenting this design to you all today. Again, the prior design and the new design, which I'll explain in detail. And this is just one other size comparison relative to just other precedents in New York City vis-a-vis the size of the building. The left-hand one, which I'm going to show images of later about materiality, is the Brooklyn Bridge Park boathouse that our firm designed. The Clearwater, which is a transient visitor to the marina, is to the right of the dock house plan and elevation, and then a couple of other precedents, one unbuilt and one built. So the site for the dock house is actually located a block or so below 79th Street access and rotunda, outside of the view shed of the rotunda, which you'll see from a rendering later on. It's in an active part of the park that has the promenade for bicycling and running and walking, bicycle paths as well, West Side Highway. And because of the topography and the trees, the site is actually not visible from this east side of the park. And also, as you'll see from the section, from the apartment buildings and buildings that are located along Riverside Drive. The building plan has been rotated 45 degrees relative to the promenade to allow for more improved views of the water from adjacent to the building from the promenade. So it basically opens up the greater views of the river from that area, and also distinguishes itself as a building on water, not on land. This is a cross section through Riverside Park, again, just explaining the way in which the building is screened by topography and trees located there. The height, aside from the footprint of the building, which has been maximum size has been set by review from DEC. The cross-section or height of the building is also prescribed to comply with flood requirements. So it's at the minimum height that it can be to be above flood elevation. And then I'll explain later about the mechanical space, but basically we've created a recessed mechanical area in the center of the roof the building to screen that equipment. And I should say that this program, were it located anywhere in the vicinity or on land, it would still need to be elevated at this height. The dock level plan is on the left, and the reflected ceiling plan is on the right. One enters the dock from a area that has this 45-degree chamfer, creates a kind of waiting space just west of the promenade. And then this is over water here. There are gangways, you'll just see in the 3D views here. And then the space. It's just that's all right. This is all underneath the building. There are 9 structural columns. Maybe I'll wait. Okay. 12 times, I assume. That's the first time I can remember hearing a grandfather clock in a really long time. So there are 9 structural concrete columns that support the building above. There are 2 risers, a utility riser and a riser that includes utilities, as well as a accessible lift, 2 stairs that go to the level above, primary stair, which is oriented toward the entry, and then secondary, which is for access and egress. The program of the building has been designed, and you'll see a diagram of this in a minute, such that all of the active programs are located around the perimeter to get light and views, but also views in looking at the activities happening inside. And then reflected ceiling plan, the perimeter of the building are, and you'll see this in a cross section in a few minutes, are all have exposed structure with then suspended acoustical clouds above them, and then lighting below that. And then the center of the plan has spaces that are, more private, like restrooms, mechanical space, a locker room, a changing area, as well as the lift and various mechanical spaces as well. The roof level is a green roof. Again, that's the recessed location of the building heat pumps. And then this is a green roof system that is a New York City Park standard green roof system. This shows the kind of diagrammatic order or organization of the building, with the dock level here. The promenade is not shown, but is there. And then the concrete platform on which is located the occupiable space above flood height, and then angled perimeter columns that allow for the corners of the building to be chamfered, which slightly reduces the apparent mass of the building. And then the green roof located above that. So steel structure on top of a concrete deck. That's like a cast concrete, exposed concrete below, that's covered with the perforated expanded metal panels, which I can describe in a moment, I will describe. And then the exterior expression of the building are basically open triangular windows on the corners of the building, half-size smaller triangular windows on the sides, and opaque walls. And the opaque walls and windows are covered with either horizontally or vertically oriented aluminum bar grating, which provides shade, but also provides a sense of depth and shadow to give the building a little bit more dynamic quality, which you'll see in terms of the light studies that we did. So this is the detail showing the orientation of these grills. The grills are separated by a reveal that follows the orientation of the structural columns behind in the building. And I'm including this really just, this is a structural drawing of the building just to show how the expression of the building, the exterior architectural expression, represents what's happening inside, which is the actual orientation of these perimeter columns. They're not actually trusses, but they are helping to brace the building, and they also allow for the corners of the building. This is a roof plan, but they allow for the corners of the building to be chamfered, which again helps reduce the scale and kind of provides a distinctive detail for the exterior. These are elevations included in the proposal. I think the renderings will be more helpful, but I can come back to these if it's helpful. And I'm not going to talk about this. Is the wave screen on the dock. So the design has been conceived in terms of 5 principles that engage various both programmatic requirements as well as aesthetic and functional and ecological goals. Again, I'm not going to get into them. I think they kind of all come into play just through my description of the project, but I'm happy to come back to these if that's helpful. We were interested in referencing New York's maritime heritage in a simple way through the expression of these triangular orientation of these, the diagonal orientation of these columns on the perimeter, which references both the nearby 69th Street transfer bridge, obviously the open truss work of the George Washington Bridge, the gangways, which are in the immediate vicinity of the building, and then of course, just the more generally the triangular sails and rigging of boats that are often obviously inhabiting the marina. So this view is looking south, just north of the building, where you see the structure that is elevated above the dock level, 9 concrete columns below it. The stairs, which wrap the building, also have a similar triangular deal of posts and railing as the gangways, the building itself, and then the expression of the open corners, which you'll see in several other renderings that are following this. This is a detail from a little bit closer, looking at the area of, I don't want to call it refuge, but just west of the promenade that provides a waiting area that's actually on top of a grating. It's on top of this material here, over the water, and then fencing that and gate with signage and information about the building and the marina there as well. And you can see the open corner here and there. The material palette has been chosen for how the different textures and materials respond to daylight and take on a dynamic quality under different qualities of light, and also give a sense of depth to the building as efficiently as possible within a building that's very constrained for footprint and because of the maximum water coverage, but also we wanted to have a kind of play of light and shadow that helped to animate the way the building would be experienced. So starting from what I just mentioned, which is the galvanized steel grating at this area, pedestrian and visitor waiting area just west of the promenade. This is the existing metal and wood seawall fence, which we're stopping on either side of this new entry point. The handrails that are being used at dock level under the building, but also down the dock, are cables with a wooden top, which matches the existing A-dock railing. And then the building itself has the 2 risers have a pre-weathered corrugated zinc covering that allows these to be taken off if access is needed to service the electrical and mechanical and plumbing risers there, as well as the elevator. The underside of the building is clad in a expanded metal panel, which is located here. The reflected ceiling plan previously has the grid of those panels drawn. The horizontal and vertically oriented triangular grille panels, which I'll show an image of in a moment, are very similar to those that we used on the boathouse that we designed in Brooklyn Bridge Park. This is the clear anodized material. The actual pattern we're proposing is 2 inches apart, so it's a little bit wider than this, a little bit deeper. This is the fence material. It's not for color, but it is a Parks standard that they're using for fencing. It's a galvanized steel. It would be not painted, vertically oriented at the gate and fencing. The window mullions, clear anodized aluminum. This is the handrail posts, stainless steel. And then a 2-inch square woven stainless steel mesh for the handrails themselves. And then this is really more for color, but we're proposing a gray frit pattern, most likely 2-inch on center, matching the grills for the open corner windows to provide bird protection. It'll be located on the second surface, so behind the external part of just behind, on the back side of the outer light of glass. But we're proposing a gray frit as well. 2-inch on center, yeah, which is the maximum for vertical orientation. Sorry, for horizontal. So you can go 4 inches maximum for vertical lines, but we want to, yep. And then this is the expanded metal, and that provides access to the ceiling above, as well as screens, some piping and electrical for downlights that are located in the ceiling. That is, yeah, that finish, yeah, it's a powder coated finish, like a gray powder coated finish, yeah. Yeah, powder coated, yeah. And the idea with that material is both to provide access to the ceiling above, but also it's very impact resistant. So it's around 10 or so feet, 10 or roughly 10 feet above dock level, but to have a robust material there. Yes, I can go back to the reflected ceiling plan. So this is this is showing downlights that are integrated, which you'll see a night view with the light. The intent with the lighting, which I'll talk about in a second, is to not light the building, but to light the space under the building, as well as the handrail, which has for the stairs, which has light in.
So it's a grid of.
It's a grid of panels. Yep.
4 feet or 2. What is that?
These are
3 feet or something. I don't know.
I remember the spacing. Yeah. 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 Yep. And they have reveals between them. They basically use like butterfly clips and they fold out. We used them recently on public school gymnatorium in Brooklyn that we just did. PS 456 on Flatbush or on State Street in Brooklyn. So yeah, so that's the grid, and then they angle up to meet the edge of the slab. So they both help to kind of conceal the conduit that's running for the lighting, but also there are some pipes that will be transferring under the building tight to the bottom of the slab. So yeah. Yep.
And then we can
Sorry.
revert back
Yep.
to discussion.
So this shows the way, again, to the extent that we can with renderings, kind of our intent that the building appearance takes on some of the ambient qualities of the light and the water. That's a night view where you see the light up below and then the handrail, either we're in the process of looking at finalizing the lighting either in the handrail or in the posts, washing the stair as well. And then there'll be a linear light integrated into the top of the fence gate. Yep. Oh, that basically the size of the building is in relation to the operational size of the marina. So there's a certain number of restrooms and staff required in connection with that. So I know Parks has 4 or 5 staff that'll be permanently in the building. And then there are the boat patrons that are using the facility as well. So it's sized according to that, based upon standards which are.
And how do you project? I'm just curious, how do you project the utility of this? Because it hasn't existed.
Yes. That was based upon Parks Maritime Operations developing their program for the project in relation to other facilities and in relation to their experience operating the prior marina. And the new marina, when it's fully expanded, will have roughly 10 times the number of slips that were designed for the original, 1930s marina, which was like 16 slips or 19 slips, something like that. And now it's going to be up to 190 at the end in the full.
And the parks will be in charge of licensing and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I mean, my understanding is New York City Parks Maritime Operations are the users and managers of the facility, operators of the facility. Yep, yep. This, again, this is a real building that exists and photos of it that is in Brooklyn Bridge Park, but it shows that we designed, that shows the way in which these panels, just a few inches in front of the opaque or glazed surfaces of the building, take on light at different times of day, change, and have a more dynamic quality. It's the same clear anodized aluminum. We were talking about this a moment ago, this lighting plan, just looking at lighting has not been 100% finalized, but this is DGA is the lighting consultant for the building. And then
I would imagine.
Sorry, commissioners, I just want to be mindful of the testimony and then we can ask questions. Apologies.
just a few views of this in context. So this is from northeast of the site where you see the building, from a relatively small area of grass directly behind the building, and south are ball fields. This is from the marina, looking at the building, again, rendering in context, so to speak, with the boats. This is from the water side, again, golden hour sunset, but giving you a sense of how the building sits relative to the tree line behind it and the buildings along Riverside Park. This is from the rotunda. Its building is partially screened by, this is when you're really looking, obviously south, by existing tree in this location. This is the terrace. This project, we're not part of this project. This is a separate project. It's underway now. This just shows you cross-section through the building with more detail, just for that we really set the height of the building at the max, the least highest height it could have in order to have occupiable spaces under this recessed mechanical area. And then finally, just wrapping up, this is a more distant view shed analysis that we did, looking at when you're walking along the promenade, what is the extent of impact of this building on your view shed relative to what you see behind the building. So this is from the south looking north, where you see you can still see from this vantage point and south of it, both towers of the George Washington Bridge, which is obviously several miles north. And then from the north looking south, from this location, the building is, the background to the building is actually the 59th Street sanitation transfer station and the buildings beyond in Jersey City. And I don't think I'm going to I kind of described all of this, but I would just say the building has been really conceived as being visible 360 degrees, the smallest possible size it can have in a location that is minimally visible from outside the immediate environs of the building, as I described, and with extremely durable materials and forms that connect to the kind of maritime function and context in which the building is located. And then there's a whole series of mitigation measures that were part of the Section 106 process that are really just integrated into the design of the building. Happy to talk about them, but really, and these are about the larger marina, so I'm going to skip to them. That's that dock level handrail, and there.
Thank you so much for
your
presentation.
You're welcome.
We will first hear in-person testimony. I believe we have some signed up today. If anybody's here in person to testify, please come forward.
Should I stand still? Or?
You can be
Okay.
seated for this portion.
Hi, my name is David Polikoff. I am a licensed sailing instructor. I have worked at the boat Basin. I hope to return there again in the future. I'm also a licensed New York City sightseeing guide, so I have some history of the area. I also live on the east side, but I actually travel to the west side to Riverside Park to make use of the amenities in Riverside Park. I support this design. I think that the design team and New York City Parks has done a fantastic job of listening to the both the constituency of the marine community, the mariners, both here in all the boroughs, New Jersey, as well as those that visit from abroad, and they've listened to the non-mariner community in the area. And this has been a fantastic negotiation and compromise. A lot of the function that people like myself would have wished for have been reduced to satisfy those who are concerned about the form. So I think any further changes in the form will sacrifice function. And this is already probably at the, I'm not the expert, at the minimum viable product. If we make further changes, then it becomes a question of, is it going to service the marina in its needs for now and in the future, because this past marina had to last 80 to 90 years. For those that seem to question the design and want, oh, why can't we have the same dockhouse that we have had? That dockhouse was inadequate. It flooded during Sandy. It didn't meet code. And it was, if you read Yelp reviews, it was a disgrace. New York deserves a world-class marina and dockhouse. This will come close, but because of the compromises, it's going to be a little bit short of that. That's okay. This will serve the needs I have and those of my friends in the boating community, whether they are instructors or just average recreational boater users or visitors. To those that say, well, I can't see the condominiums in New Jersey, I would say, well, you could take a step to your left or a step to your right, and you can see the condos. You're not missing a view of the Grand Canyon. Riverside Park is 4 miles long. The Hudson River is 315 miles long. So there's plenty of opportunity to see the river and the condos blocking the Palisades. So I look forward to, it's been 3 years since I've been able to teach at the marina. It provides a lot of educational opportunities, provides recreational opportunities, and it does contribute to, has a financial benefit for both the Upper West Side and the city from those that pay to keep their boats there, as well as those who visit from all over the world, literally. So I would hope that this will move forward without further delay. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else signed up in person? Okay. I believe we have remote testimony. Chelsea, has anyone signed up for remote testimony?
Yes, we have a few people signed up for remote testimony. First is Megan Fitzpatrick, followed by Blair Walsh, Dr. C.M. Pyle, and Hal Dorfman. So we are going to begin with Megan Fitzpatrick. If you can please state your name and affiliation and keep your testimony to under 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. Landmark West is a non-for-profit community organisation committed to the preservation of the architectural heritage of the Upper West Side. Our committee understands the damage imposed by Superstorm Sandy and the need for the replacement of the original boathouse. After reviewing the proposal for the 7th time since 2021, we remain dissatisfied with the results, believing the boathouse design poses adverse effects on nearby historic properties and notably obstructs clear views of the Hudson River. The boat basin at 79th Street is surrounded by the National Register of Historic Places listed Riverside Park and Riverside Drive Historic District, including contributing resources to the historic district, such as the West 79th Street Rotunda Pedestrian Plaza, the West 79th Street Traffic Circle and Ramp, and a section of the Henry Hudson Parkway running from West 72nd Street north to St. Clair Place. Riverside Park is also an NYC LPC designated scenic landmark. These sites will be impacted by the expansion of this proposal if it moves forward. The redesign by the Architectural Research Office through the NYC Department of Parks and Recreation proposes one-story boathouse elevated on pilings. At 3,800 square feet, the latest proposal is 61% of the size of the original 2021 dockhouse proposal. A compromise was reached with the latest design that lowered the dockhouse from a two-story structure to a one-story structure. However, the proposed design will occupy nearly 5 times the space of the current dilapidated dockhouse. We share the community's concern that the proposed boathouse has the potential to significantly block views of the Hudson River for neighbors living alongside Riverside Drive and those who want to enjoy views from Riverside Park. The excessive height and the size of the proposed boathouse, however, is not our only point of concern. The proposed materials of the design are entirely out of context with the aesthetics of the surrounding scenic landscape. Ecological impacts aside, we are concerned that with the increased development on the dock, this once local boat basin will turn into a full-fledged marina, which looks to serve only an elite few of the community while blocking river access for the many. Our committee would like to see a smaller boathouse which better respects the waterfronts and shares a material palette native to the scenic landmark Riverside Park. Given the current excessive size, we would hope the program could be reduced to the bare minimum and that the finished facility be accessible to all park goers. In a city which strives for equity, yet has cut funding to libraries, education, and earmarks approximately 0.5 of its overall budget to parks, one hopes that it is not merely spending $90 million to better serve the interest of a few dozen pleasure boat owners at the expense of everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Chelsea, on to the next.
Next, we have Blair Walsh. You're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Blair Walsh speaking today on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Landmarks Conservancy was concerned when the new design for the 79th Street Boathouse in Riverside Park came to our attention. We think the boathouse as currently proposed will be detrimental to the design of Riverside Park and its iconic view sheds. Riverside Park is listed in the National Register of Historic Places and has been designated as one of the city's few scenic landmarks by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the park is a significant cultural landscape born of the 19th century parks movement. Bona fides aside, the park has been beloved by generations of New Yorkers for its views of the Hudson River. We understand the need to take flooding into account at the boathouse location and that it has shaped the design of the building into a two-story structure. This feels like a heavy-handed response. The taller building interrupts views of the river and is damaging to one's experience of the park. We struggle to understand why the Parks Department didn't learn much from the widespread opposition to earlier, even larger designs. While the proposed massing is unwelcoming, the proposed design makes the structure appear foreboding. The triangular panels sandwiched between a heavy base and roofline read as aggressive when hovering over the piers. Good civic architecture doesn't have to make a bold statement in every instance. This location calls for a background design that doesn't intrude on the park experience. The park is too important to our city to not pursue all options that would allow for a lower building. We encourage you to make sure the applicants have exhausted all other possibilities for a lower structure. Wet flood-proofing measures that would allow for the entry and exit of floodwaters to interiors could easily be employed here. A one-story building would also eliminate the need for security fencing. We recognize the competing interests that need to be taken into account when an addition is made for busy urban park. However, we believe that rethinking the boathouse's design can still result in a solution that would satisfy multiple parties and not hinder the expansive views that are Riverside Park's greatest asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. I hope everything's okay. Oh, you're back.
Sorry about that. I think I had finished up just when I went out.
Who's next? Thanks.
Next, we have Dr. C.M. Pyle. If you are in the Zoom room, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing no hands, we can proceed to Hal Dorfman.
Good afternoon. My name is Hal Dorfman. Is my audio okay? Yes, no?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I am a licensed New York State registered architect, as well as a licensed U.S. Coast Guard master mariner. I've been a sailor for 40 years. I am a permit holder at the marina for the last over 10 years. I'm a sailor in the area here, and I'm a fourth generation New Yorker. My office for many decades was on 79th Street and in Times Square. I've been a resident my whole life of New York City. And one thing I've learned designing things, when there are multiple parties involved, you do not sacrifice the good for the perfect. We only live within the time that we're present. This proposal, as I've said in my written comments, is a wonderful, wonderful design. The people who have put this together have studied it from every single angle possible that we have with that technology. They've used 3D design, they've used lightscapes, they've used daytime, they've used view corridors. It shows that with a park that's over 10,000 feet linearly long, that there are many, many, many opportunities to look at the river from every angle except the immediate spot standing in front of the basin and in front of this new proposed landmark. It will become a landmark. In 50 years from now, people will say that this is a wonderful building. It's provided security. It's provided access. It's provided control for the Coast Guard to admit ships going up and down what we call the Rhine of the West, the Hudson River. It's a wonderful project. I've been involved with this now for over 6 or 7 years. I helped secure the funding from Homeland Security, and I think the people who have been involved, from the Parks Department to the people who have done the design, have done an exemplary job on this project. And I think that the objections from these other agencies and these other do-good groups are very well mentioned, and they have actually added to the design, added to preserving the site corridors, added to preserving the historic quality. Like I said, my office was on 72nd Street for almost a decade and a half. I appreciate the Upper West Side. My daughter lives on the Upper West Side. And I think the park corridor, the Riverside Park, is going to be so enhanced by this project. The new docks are going to provide access to children who want to take boating lessons, to older people who want to go on the docks and enjoy a Sunday or a Saturday or any day walk. It's going to provide new security. It's going to provide cleaner water with the pump out stations that they're putting on the docks. I think this is such a win-win situation that if we keep holding this off, we're never going to see a new marina on the Upper West Side. And it's the only public marina that exists. Swindler's Cove sunk into the water over 10 years ago. The 23rd Street boat basin is practically not existent. The North Cove Marina has been taken over by a very upscale marina operator, and the Manhattan Yacht Club was forced from that location to New Jersey. This is our public marina in Manhattan. It needs to go ahead, and it needs to be continued. And I vote wholeheartedly in favor of this proposal. And I ask for you, as the Public Design Commission, to also give it a raised hand and vote in favor of it progressing to the next phase, so we can see construction happen in our lifetimes. I thank you for your time and listening to me.
Chelsea, do we have any additional members seeking to testify?
We do not have anyone else signed up for remote testimony, but is anyone within the Zoom room here to testify? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing no hands, we are good to proceed.
Okay, I'd like to begin by, can whoever is here representing the Parks Department come forward? That's you. Hi, Sheena. Can we give Sheena the mic? Hi.
I'm Sheena Brown from Parks.
Thank you. As I know that my fellow commissioners will have questions along these lines, I just want to start with the Parks Department And I would ask you to speak to three related things. One is, can you just describe for us the program of this structure, the design intent, and then the outreach that parks and other related agencies did to create the program and as you were moving forward to get feedback on it?
Sure. I'd actually like to defer to my colleague who's on Zoom, Chris Amy. He's with our Marina operations team and has been with this project for 6-7 years. So he can absolutely talk to how important this is for us and what the marina is used for. And then we'll defer to, back to ARO, I think, to talk about the design question. And then what was your last one?
Really, I'm looking for
the community outreach.
For this initial question, it's really just how this program, how it was created and how you, the public feedback you saw it and who will use it.
Great. So Chris?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Chris Amy. I'm the Deputy Director for Marine Infrastructure. There's a slide earlier on in the presentation that speaks a bit about that process. It's a lot further on, but anyone can go back and take a look. So unfortunately, I don't have the exact dates and time, but this is a project now, decade plus in the making. We've been working on, thank you for flipping back, in conjunction with the boating community that's been there at the boathouse. That was a slide there. It just gives a list of all of the groups, the people that we've reached out to, both in terms of our sister agencies in the city, federal and state agencies that utilize and work with us on operations at the marina. The various every elected relevant to the site, every elected official, community board, of course, we've been to now multiple times, recently receiving near unanimous approval for the design that you're seeing here today. And then, of course, at all those public meetings, we've listened intently, and it's been said here today. We've listened intently to the concerns about the various aspects of the marina, but really focused on delivering that maximum program that provides for thousands of school children, the hundreds of permittee boaters that we're going to be hosting at the site, along with the transients that we receive annually from all abroad that come in and out of the marina. And just there is a large host of, and we can provide in written detail the specific write-up of all of these needs and the programmatic needs. But there's a huge amount of work that goes into this labor of love at the marina. And that's something that was taken into account as we developed that operational programmatic design that informed the size and the space layout and so forth of the marina. And then, of course, the parameters imposed on the project by permitting requirements, the flood elevation of the building requiring it to be set at the minimum height that we have it at, and as well as the ceiling height being minimized as well. And the intensive studies that we've done looking at the view shed from the park to try to minimize the size of that building, considering that program. But it's been a long time coming, getting to where we are today. And it's something that I'm glad to hear, people, the positive comments, and we're continuing to take into account those concerns that were heard today. And we'll, respond to them as we continue to iterate on this design moving forward.
Chris, can you expound on your comment about education programs? You mentioned thousands of school children. Can you be more specific there? What are they doing there? How many roughly a year? Who's doing what in this boathouse?
Sure. So you do have community sailing programs, learn to sail programs, even just excursion vessels. The Clearwater was referenced on a slide here. But you have these historic vessels that dock at the at the marina pier and take school classroom groups out for sails, teach kids about sailing, teach kids about marine ecology. We have water testing. We have the Billion Oyster program comes and does educational sessions at the pier here. And then we have relationships with the schools up in the upper west, the west side. And like I said, thousands of children come through the site every year through those school programs, through community programs, recreational programs. And then there's, the paddling groups who've utilized the site in the past, and we're looking forward to inviting back with restored access for kayaking and canoeing at the site. And specific numbers, specific groups, we can provide a list, but it is extensive. It is ongoing. It's a very, unfortunately, the last couple of years since the site was closed, you don't see that activity. But on the weekends, in the summers, and all year round, 24/7, 365, the site's in operation. But you have those groups coming and going, and activating the site and loving it. It's one of the pleasures of this project so far, is hearing the community members come out and say they remember as kids, getting on the water here at the boat basin, going out for community sails on the clear water, or with the Atlantic yachting, and going out on the water and getting their first sense of what it means to be living on the city of water, and accessing the beautiful Hudson River. So we're looking forward to inviting that back. And we do believe we've developed a program that provides really the bare minimum for what we need to deliver that program, and to continue to be that resource for the community going forward.
So will those programs restart once the construction?
Absolutely. Once construction is complete, we look forward to inviting back all the groups who've been with us before, and with the expanded slip count, we'll have capacity to look for further partnerships with the nonprofits and the recreational groups, educational groups that utilize the marina. It's really a focus of our program there. A focus of our vision for the future is to continue to accommodate those things and to build upon them wherever we can.
So who are those additional slips intended for broadly? What's your vision for that?
The growth in slips is intended to accommodate both the programs we've been discussing, but also the 15-year wait list for slip access at the marina. Like it was said in comments, it is a public marina, the only public marina where you can get a slip on the island of Manhattan. That's run directly by the Parks Department, by Parks Department staff. Rates are commensurate with that vision of the public marina, and those are set by the city. And those will be open to those folks on that wait list, to continue to build that robust, recreational boating community in Manhattan.
Okay.
I'm pretty familiar with the school programs in that area. And, so I think what Deborah's asking for is, you probably have a great, very specific story to tell of schools that you've served, programs that you've served. And I think it's better for us to be specific, not definitive, because these things are going to grow, but specific. That way, people can't disparage intentions, and the expansiveness, I think, of what you're trying to do becomes clearer rather than playing a guessing game. Also, I would remind you that basically the public schools are closed during the months that this would most be used. So I would look to make that list of community programs that use this, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's a lot, but the non-specific nature of your answer leaves it open to speculation, and I would be clear here. Mike, I have an additional point to this. You say there's a waiting list for slots, and these are luxury items, I would imagine. These slots, et cetera, like parking spaces in New York. I'm just curious, is the Parks Department getting any funding to help ameliorate the cost of this that would probably augment the public programs that you can do in this new facility? Because I think your programs could be expansive and really beneficial. And so I would just be curious about that. Obviously, you don't need to answer that now, but it's something you might think about. You say you have a long waiting list. I'm sure you don't have that many slips. I'm sure, the Parks Department is always looking to expand their programming, and this would be a great way for them to expand their programming beyond traditional parks programs.
Do you know the answer to that, Chris and Sheena? Like, will there be a fee to folks who will get these new slips?
The permit slips do come along with a permit fee, yes.
What is that fee?
I actually don't have that information at hand. I don't work directly with the permitting, but I can get you that answer.
Okay. All right. And then regarding, I'm going to kind of follow up on Meryl's question. If you have any, and if the answer to this is no, we can move on to my next question. But if you have anything more specific to add regarding parks plans for programming post-construction, we'd love to know what that is.
I don't have anything official to announce at this moment, but just to say that we're looking forward to the return of the programming that was there and to exploring opportunities to expand it when we have the facility to accommodate it.
Okay, thank you. And then as a follow-up, and this may be a question for Adam, how many times over the, I understand you stated earlier that this has been going through outreach for around 10 years. Is that right? Roughly?
The project was, there's a Hurricane Sandy FEMA funded project. So in development since the outcome of the storm. But we have been started, you can see here on the slide, 2019 was the visioning session with the boaters and the community that was held at, you can see the existing dockhouse, dilapidated dockhouse here, that was held then. So we've been in these conversations around the design and the programming of the future site for about 5 years.
Okay. And I wonder if either you, Chris, or you, Adam, can speak to the kind of, this is feedback from some voters, but more broadly, from the electeds representing their constituents, from residents, from some of the various folks who spoke today who live in the neighborhood. Like, what? Just speak broadly to the stakeholder feedback.
Oh, I have it on. Sorry. Yes, I have it on. Sorry. So there were several kinds of feedback that we received. There were many people who didn't want the project to be there at all. There are those who felt, as was expressed by some of the people speaking remotely, that the building was not in keeping with the character of the material of the park, which I can talk about in a second. And then there are others who have wanted the building to be as small as possible. So what you haven't seen was a whole year-long foray into, and then there was also the pressure to reduce the overwater coverage on the building, so that for environmental reasons. So that led to a 2-story option, which hasn't even been presented here, that then invoked Section 106, which required SHPO engagement through FEMA, but then that was reduced to a 1-story scheme, which you see presented here today, which still nonetheless required the SHPO involvement. So I think our intent has always been to create a project that would be worthy of its location, acknowledging that it is minimally visible from anywhere, but that it celebrates its presence in the river. It is appropriately civic in nature through the character of the building that expresses in a durable and direct way its function. That is exciting or dynamic in the sense of that I think a public building should be, regardless of how that's done. And even we're doing it in a very small way through the way in which light and shadow plays in the building and some of the form of the building. So we've been really through design, and it's been really satisfying on the one hand, because I grew up in the Albany area and we've done other buildings on the Hudson and Beacon and in Brooklyn Bridge Park. And to me, regardless of the size of the building, this is incredibly important personally and meaningful for me. So I think we've tried our best to do something commensurate with the program and the requirements and the setting that will make this adorable. And I hope what Hal said is true, that in 50 years, people do think about it as a landmark. That was a very wonderful thing to envision. So I don't know if that answers your question. Okay, thank you.
Can you come up here and
Hi there.
state who you are?
Yeah, Naomi from EDC. I just do want to add that we've had several community board presentations and meetings, and the last one that we did have was resoundingly positive, positive feedback in terms of responding to their comments and concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's a good segue to talking about specifics around the feedback. Lori?
Thank you. And I want to thank Parks first for sticking with this project and for coming back. I don't know where you are. There you are. And for bringing on an architect who was up to the task with experience with this kind of project. And I think that, in response to some of the comments about native, I don't know what that is, but, and low, kind of historic nature of the park, I do understand, but this building and many that we're beginning to see are addressing the new issues that our city is having to confront in the rising currents and, serious water level issues that was shown very, very precisely in that slide. And I really appreciate it because it's not always clear in these presentations. So we now have buildings that didn't really exist before. They didn't really address the problem that we have before us. And so I am thrilled to see this building. I'm thrilled to see somebody take this on as a design problem in a very serious way and to listen carefully to all the comments, but you still have to have a building there, and I think the materials are absolutely appropriate. I'm very excited about the idea of it turning and providing more view corridor. I think that was incredibly clever. The chamfered corners are really interesting. I'm wondering if it's one piece of glass. I have all these little questions, but I think we'll probably find out more about that going forward. So, I just want to, again, thank Parks and the architect and the community for bringing this building to us. I think it's very, very elegant. And I look forward also to seeing the development of that section through the building. Because I'm interested in those things, like the edge of the floor deck, to the membrane and the roof edge and all that. But I think the depression at the center of the mechanical well is like very beautifully done. So I'm just, very excited to see this exemplary proposal for this type of building. One little question, I'm wondering who answers the buzzer when somebody rings for access. I have no idea. That was, like who rings the bell and there's this little comment.
24/7. So,
Yeah.
and there are people, there are, I think, 4 or 5 staff. Chris could speak to the specific, but that's who answers the buzzer.
Oh, so there's somebody there all the time?
Yes, there are
Oh,
people in the
great.
building.
And they can then go upstairs
Yes.
and use the facilities?
Yes.
7/24?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioners, we have about 10 more minutes. So I'm just mentioning that and I invite additional comments as well.
I'm going to be very brief in the interest of time. I think overall what struck me a lot about your design materials and presentation is that you have a very wide array of materials, both in terms of a lot of different types of meshes and grills, and a lot of different treatments of metal, whether it's galvanized metal, stainless steel, or others. And when I look at the renderings, the building is so architecturally expressive that what stands out to me as being a little bit out of place or perhaps unnecessarily complex are all the guardrails. And what I mean by that are the stair guardrails, which I know you expressed interest in echoing all of the different infrastructure pieces of the marina. And then we have the guardrail around the new pier. And then we have the guardrail at the existing waterfront. And then we have the fence that the Parks Department is requesting. And then we have the panel on the underside. And they just all are very self-similar, but not the same. So I would just encourage you to pick and choose which one you think is the one that needs to be the one that complements the architecture and be expressive. And which one may just want to recede to the background because it's more of a utilitarian approach and less necessary. Because I think the architecture has a lot of potential and all these other elements are kind of cluttering the environment a little bit.
Anyone else? Okay, just to summarize, we applaud the persistence of the design team and EDC and the Parks Department in bringing this important structure to life and in listening to the broad range of stakeholders who have a very important vested interest in seeing it built and making sure that it does not compromise the experience from Riverside Park beyond what it needs to serve its function, but that it also, in doing so, serves the function of education, of introducing young New Yorkers to their waterfront, to the Hudson, and as a kind of a teaching facility in terms of what we can do today, given the conditions of our city in this era of changing climate. So with that, I would say when we see this project again, we'd love to have you take a look at the simplifying the guardrail typologies to let the strength of the architecture really shine. And with that, I will now take a roll call vote on item number 29856, preliminary review of the reconstruction of the 79th Street boat basin, including the construction of a boathouse at the Riverside Park and Hudson River between 80th Street and 73rd Street, Manhattan. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Castilla?
Approved.
Lori Hawkinson?
Approved.
Karen Keel?
Approved.
Carrie Maloney?
Approved.
Manuel Miranda?
Approved.
Meryl Tisch?
Approved.
Jimmy Van Bramer?
Approve.
I also approve, so let the record show that the preliminary design for the new boathouse at the 79th Street Boat Basin has been unanimously approved. Congratulations and thank you. And with that, our meeting is now adjourned. Okay.